including the Crories, are ready to watch us. Anyway. Oh, he's out. I guess we surprised him. Oh yeah, okay, we're live. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our August 17th Planning Board meeting. I'm going to start off with the Pledge of Allegiance, like we always do. I pledge allegiance to the flag,
to the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, board business minutes.
Not when we're meeting twice a month, not ready yet, sorry.
We're done with minutes, okay. Bills?
Yes, have bills, 2 bills to send around, 2 peer review bills. The 2 peer review bills were, one was from, for the review, recent drainage review for Cooper Farm Estates. The other was a bill that I missed from February for, which one was that? Air Road, I believe. No, Northern Bank.
Okay.
I should bill it to them. Oh, it is.
Thank you. Okay, next item on the agenda is Dean Lane. I signed the paperwork to release the $40,000 bond last week. Myron, you sent that out, right?
Right.
Okay, we also have the two $2,500 checks here.
Right, so the latest update was we have the memo from DPW Director responding to, or weighing in on the items that were included on the Green's peer review letter. Overall noting that it's the town's prerogative, or the town's responsibility to do any repairs over time that are required on the public roadways.
So there's no reason to keep the $5,000.
That sounds,
That's how the town's looking at it, okay? We still have the checks, we've never cashed, we've never done anything with them, correct?
correct. You asked me to hold those, and
Yep.
so I did.
So we should release them, there's nothing we can do about it, it's, as far as the DPW's, the road is adequate, so, so I would like to release the $5,000 back to the fields. You want me to sign it? I'll sign this one.
No, I
too.
mean, it sounds like we have no choice.
Do we really have to, yeah.
Yeah, so,
Okay.
Okay, happy to take your direction on that.
I'd entertain a motion to send back the two $2,500 checks to the fields, or give them back to them right now if we want.
Ask them to pick them up, yeah. Oh,
I think I just made a motion.
Oh. there you go.
Anyone want to second it?
second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, while we're still on Dean Lane, what do you want to do with the distribution of the last lot? We're at a point where we either have to decide to move forward with it, talk to the fields about potentially donating it, if they want to settle with us about doing something with that lot, maybe with
Habitat.
Habitat, yeah, thank you, Habitat, or we need to decide what we're gonna do with it. We're going forward, we're gonna, especially where we have the fields right here.
So, Mr. Chair, I think I'd like to just say something to make sure that our residents understand the situation. So, given the fact that in the original decision, there was supposed to be this particular affordable housing unit, and so we're talking about the parcel of land, and then also they were supposed to build an affordable unit. And so, depending on how you look at it, that could be a very large sum of money that is essentially owed to the town between the parcel and having the house built. One of the options that you didn't mention was in terms of pursuing further legal remedies on this particular situation, but from my perspective, that is what is owed to the town, a lot and a house. And so I just wanted to make sure that that was
No,
clear.
we're discussing it,
Well, if you want to just make wild accusations, go ahead, but that's not what the facts are.
So I just wanted to make sure that the town knows that.
yeah.
I agree.
Well, the choice, we have to decide whether we want to continue to litigate or try to make a settlement with the fields to take the lot and have an entity do it or the town do it, if they're even willing to do it. We're at the point now we have to explore that option. Which way do we want to go?
First of all, this is not an
So,
agenda item,
Jeff-
so
Jeff
I
and Bartlett, what
think
do
we
you
should,
think?
table this until you post it.
Mr. Fields, I'm not asking you to
I don't
speak.
care what you're saying.
Then
It's not
get
an
out.
agenda- It's
Get
not on
out.
the agenda.
Mark, you can't do
Follow
that.
the
Can't tell
rules.
us to leave.
I'm
Dean
asking you to
Lane discussion.
behave and not speak unless I ask you to speak. What?
Yep, Dean Lane discussion is
It's on the agenda. Dean Lane discussion is on the agenda.
Right, so a little bit more background. If, and we had discussed several meetings ago, if the board wants to move ahead with litigation, you would need authorization from the select board. So it would be back to the select board for use of town council for that purpose. We've had several discussions over time on whether the town council feels it would be possible for the town to require a developer to build a unit that they've made clear that they don't care to build. So it would, extremely difficult at best. So,
Well, as I recall, the last time we left this, the Fields had offered
No,
to.
it's not on the table anymore. No.
Okay,
You-
well,
I
Okay,
don't care.
then we don't have a choice.
yeah.
We don't have a choice but to
We
litigate
have an
that.
opportunity to sell it to Habitat for Humanity.
Okay.
That's what we're asking if you're willing to do.
That's what I recall.
I would like the record to state that we had 4 affordable units already done on that property.
That ship sailed a long time ago.
Why is that?
You already, we already went to court over it. You already withdrew your
You went through.
you withdrew, you guys withdrew your
How many units
opposition.
were there? How many units were there?
so I don't know
We're not-
that this,
that's
going
not what's
backwards in
discussed.
time on that.
Let's,
So
let's,
we
Mr.
need
Yates,
to
would
keep
you like
this.
not
to
discuss
investigate
this.
Going forward with Habitat for Humanity.
It's not up to me, but the issue is, that's sort of what I thought we were at
That's
some point.
kind of where I was going with this. And if you could investigate with Habitat, if they're interested,
They're very interested.
we would rather settle this than litigate. At least that's my opinion. I want to hear the rest of the board. If we can get a nonprofit organization involved to build the last unit,
So I have a question about that. So if a nonprofit entity builds the unit, then they get off of using their funds to build it. Is that correct?
we don't know that yet. We don't know what Habitat would want to do with it. Okay, but at least we should explore the option.
Marin's spoken to Habitat. She called right after I disclosed that they were interested in it.
Okay, and that's why we're trying to have this discussion, to see if you're interested in pursuing that, and we'll hold off on making a decision whether we want to litigate until you find out if Habitat is interested. That's all I'm trying to do here. Not trying to be confrontational. I'm going to give you your 5,000 back, and you tell us in the next meeting if Habitat is interested. Is that fair?
They are interested. I'm telling you that now.
I would like to have something in writing.
I would like something formal from them that they're interested in, how they're looking to proceed moving forward, something like that, okay? Can we schedule them we'll put it on as an agenda item, not a board business. When are we aware of September?
Yeah, you have
I'm gonna be
September
gone.
7th and September 14th.
September.
7th or the 14th?
We have
I'm
meetings
not
7th
sure
and
exact, but I'll get you that information beforehand and you can talk about it.
That would be
Put it on
fine.
the agenda item.
That would be fine. Do you want your checks?
Good.
They're right there. You can give them to them, Maren. Thank you. Okay, let us know. Thank you. Next one, member input.
I have some input.
Okay.
Last night, the CPC voted to recommend to the selectmen, who have indicated their support, they haven't voted on it, to raise the surcharge to 2%. The issue is that in the past, using blended funds, we've been able to somewhat reliably get to the 3%, which is a greater reimbursement or a greater inflow from the state. The last couple years, it's less clear whether that's going to happen. And the need is great, but the fields have just left. But I would like to point to something that came up in the meeting. One of the grants is to the Park and Rec to build to redo and add tennis courts at the high school. And I said, well, what about the tennis courts at Weber Village? And they said, the athletic director of the high school and the Park and Rec both do not feel they're safe to use for programs because there are actual sewer
steel manhole
manholes
plates.
in the middle of the court.
Are you
So,
kidding me?
no, I'm not kidding you. And I just sort
So
of
they're
went,
they're
"Ugh."
completely unusable.
No, they're not
You
completely
can't play
unusable.
tennis when
Well,
there are manholes in the middle of the court.
I'm just saying they're not completely unusable, but they're not usable
Oh.
for,
Had approved those.
town programs or, so just,
But how did that get through the town approval process? I mean, who approved that? That manholes be put right in the middle of tennis courts?
it may not have been, it may have been a site change. It may,
Well, we accepted the tennis courts a long time ago. Did they come in after they were accepted by
I
the town?
doubt it. I don't know. I don't know the ins and outs. I'm relaying but it's part of a pattern of carelessness. So, anyway.
Okay, are they in the actual?
I haven't seen it.
No.
The statement from the Park and Rec director was that she and the high school athletic director do not think they would be safe to use for their programs.
But none of us, I mean, I have not gone over and looked at them. Have you gone and looked at them, Bartlett? So we should probably go and look,
Yep.
you know? I
We should
mean,
all-
that's absurd.
We should all take a,
Well, it's
Because that certainly wasn't part of the plans, that there'd
No.
be manholes
Be
in the middle of the
cautious
tennis
that
court.
they're on private property. The school has an easement for students to use that, but I just want to make sure we
why
have
don't
the
we
proper
send, why don't we
permissions.
do, I thought Ed had inspected them at part of the building. Why don't we send the building inspector over and get a report
Yeah,
from him?
I'll ask building commissioner
To
to,
go in and take a look at it, please. Okay? Any other good?
Just thought that you'd be interested.
Yeah, no, thank you for
Any other
letting
good
us
news?
know.
No, I mean, other than that, they're giving out grants to the Historical Society to renovate the windows in the Houghton building. They have on deck a proposal to light Corper Field, on Air Road.
Okay.
They're having a meeting with neighbors. But the issue is that with the various things going on with the high school, playing fields being torn up for sewer construction, there really are few fields left. And St. Anne's is not renewing they're not renewing the lease on St. Anne's fields because St. Anne wants the parking lot repaired. So it's sort of
We're running out of fields.
yeah,
Very
we're
quickly.
sort of running out of fields for the next couple of years. So,
Okay. Any other good news?
no.
Is it Violet, do you have anything?
No,
Lisa? All right, well,
Question, and St. Anne's wouldn't postpone redoing the parking lot for a couple years?
I don't know. I'm not in
they
the
want
middle
us to
of.
pay to do it, to keep the lease going.
And it's, when I say repairs, it's basically seal coating. I don't know what the amount of money is involved. I don't know if who's doing what to negotiate, but that is the issue.
I
at
think the
this
Catholic
point.
Church has enough money to pay for their own parking lot.
I think they want it from us because we've been using their backfield for like 40 years or whatever. I don't know. Anything, because I have, Anna and I have an update. We both sat in on a meeting with the selectmen, the sewer people, the sewer commission. So the selectmen and Anna and I, myself. So,
And Maren.
what?
And
Oh, and
Maren.
Maren. To give us a background of how we're proceeding forward. If you didn't see the selectmen's meeting on Monday, or if you weren't at the selectmen's meeting, they're exploring the option of added capacity at the school, working on that, trying to get the DPW to get them up over 300,000. They spelled out more of a criteria moving forward, but you just can't go up and ask you want 10,000 gallons or whatever the number is. They're gonna have to come before us first for an approved site plan and special permit to do it, and then they'll be put in the queue for whatever added capacity will be available. You just can't request it.
So you're saying that an applicant, a project that wants to use the sewer, this would be part of the planning board process?
If they wanna use the sewer as is with what their flows, they've
I
already.
see, but if they want to increase it.
If they want to do form-based coding and increase it and do, apartments
Yeah.
up above and everything else that goes with it, they're going to need a site plan and special permit from us in order to calculate what they're going to do out there, and then they can apply for it. They can't just ask for it. And
In other words, it has to be a plan.
It
There
has to be a plan.
a plan in place.
Before the town will even consider expanding, or are they actively looking
they're-
at expanding?
They're actively looking at
Okay.
expanding right now. You got to remember, the sewer's going to take 2 years.
Yeah.
So they're trying to get the DPW to say that the exact same thing that they're doing right now is not 240,000 gallons, it's 300,000.
Right, DEP.
DEP. So they wouldn't have to do anything with the fields. It would, the DEP would just say, okay, you got 300,000. So that's another, that's a day. That's 60,000 gallons a day. That'll more than cover the initial phase of everybody that wants the added flows that are expressing an interest in it. So that's where the sewer people are coming from. Plus, the way that this is going to go is if you have a building in the center of town and you want to tie into the sewer, you'll be allowed to tie by right into it for what your flows are right now. If you want to increase the flow,
Right.
you got to come before us and get an approved site plan and special permit to get into the queue to do it.
Yeah.
Okay, it just doesn't you just can't automatically just ask for it. Okay, so that'll give them an idea of what's
So-
coming down the pike.
And I'm speaking about my case where I'm in the, I'm within like 100 feet of the existing sewer, but I'm a single home. I'm not increasing my,
No.
but I can apply.
Well, you will have to pay to connect to it.
Oh, of
too.
course, yeah. And I might say that the fees they charge are not attractive.
So based off the map that they provided at that meeting, it looks like the last building heading into Robinson Road that is going to be on their sewer plan for this first phase is the building that you work in, Sherry Gould's building.
No, it's not included in the first phase.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay. I just want to make sure that.
it originally
We're on the
was,
same
but
page, yeah.
then it wasn't.
Okay.
It could be if they want it. Well, they got to pay for it anyway. They got to pay for the connection and what. I don't know that part of it. They didn't share that with us. How you're gonna.
Well,
The
it's
betterment's
just
gonna
that I
be-
think a lot of people are gonna feel that if the sewer, people in the common area, if the sewer is in the common area
Mm-hmm.
and it's literally 100 feet away, why can't I connect?
Right.
Or why can't I apply to connect and pay to connect and all that kind of thing?
I don't understand if it stops at Sherry's building and they're gonna.
No, I think it goes to Northern Bank. It's
Well, then
gotta
if
go
it's-
to Northern
If
Bank.
it's going right past the road.
I mean, on that side of the road, it goes to Sherry's building, and then it
No, it
goes to
has to go
Northern
further
Bank.
than that. It has to go to Northern
Yeah, it
Bank.
has to go to Northern Bank.
So it has to go further.
Which is
than
right
that.
across the street from you.
Exactly.
Right, it's
I mean,
across the
but-
street, yes.
Yeah.
But whatever, it's not just
So-
about me. I'm just trying to
Yeah.
understand,
So that's at least the mechanism moving forward. So at least that's as much as we know right now. And like I said, we'll know further as they get into testing and everything else with the, matter of fact, we got a memo today from Water and Sewer that they've got Weston and somebody other.
Weston and Sampson.
Yeah, Sampson, to look at trying to get it up to 300, and if they have to do something about the breakout in the back, that's water department land anyway, so that's kind of where they're going with it. So they're relatively confident that they can get it up to 300, but we're a little early yet.
So I have another update in addition
Okay.
to that one. So the Affordable Housing Trust met, and so a couple of things. With Dean Lane, the one that we were just discussing, we had two different motions that the Affordable Housing Trust made last night and were voted unanimously. The first one is to support the planning board in its negotiations with the developer at Dean Lane. And then the second one is a motion that the Affordable Housing Trust will explore possibilities to getting a unit built. So that's part of what we discussed as well. We are also touching base with Town Council regarding Tehadwan and Durkee, where we are looking to be able to have affordable units there. And then next Tuesday, August 22nd, the Affordable Housing Trust members are going to be having a joint meeting by invitation to the FinCom and Select Board meeting to provide a historical and financial outlook for the trust work.
Sorry about that, I thought it was off.
Do we have an update on Northern Bank, Hager, or?
No,
I don't think we have.
I mean, nothing more than I'd talked about before.
And I have asked Maren to reach out to the Lapoli company about, we're looking at 550 King Street. I am under the impression, I think Maren can answer it better, that they do have an idea, nothing that's in stone, about sequencing and build-out scenario, best-case scenario of how they want to proceed moving forward. So sooner or later, we'll get something from them.
No, yeah, we do expect the definitive subdivision application within a week or so, and they did indicate that they would try to include that information with that application.
Could we address the widespread rumors about the existing IBM buildings going to UMass Lowell?
I've heard nothing about that. Have you heard anything about it? No. I don't know where you're getting that.
Just rumors.
Oh, it's way out there, all over the place.
I don't think we should address any rumors.
No, we shouldn't.
Okay.
You know,
I'm just inviting anyone who knows anything to
They
say
haven't
something.
spoken to us about it
Yeah.
at all. Nothing formally or informally about it. Nope, nothing. No, I
think about if we started addressing all the rumors we hear constantly.
That is true, yes.
Right.
We'd be meeting
Other
twice a
than, we
week.
know that the owner is pursuing reuse of those existing buildings as well as
Yeah.
new development.
Right.
Yeah.
He's looking at anything that works out there, so. Anything else with member input? Anybody else? Before we get into public input, I'd like to try to get the A&R done so that they don't have to sit here, and it's pretty basic, it's pretty straightforward. You want to give us the 2-minute Reader's Digest version? And why you're doing this?
Sure. You want to come to every meeting we can. So, my name is Kevin, I'm from David Ross Associates, and I represent Hartwell Hill Homes LLC. And we're doing a 6-lot A&R on Hartwell Ave.
Okay, I'm sorry, the one that I passed out was the old one.
So you're going from a 7-lot to a 6-lot?
Exactly. So that's exactly what we're doing. We had an A&R signed by the board last spring of 22. We're just making modifications to the lots because of natural heritage issues. And we're going from 7 to 6. There's also a parcel being conveyed to the cemetery in the back, which is a lot larger than what was originally proposed. And we're looking for approval under the A&R statute.
Yeah.
It's pretty simple, it's pretty consistent with what was signed before. I have 2 hammerhead lots, lot 1 and lot 6. The rest are standard, they conform to the lot width, lot shape. They all contain in excess of 36,000 square feet of dry land. And again, it's going from 7 to 6.
So are you going to have easement access to lot 6
Eventually, once we,
Lot five.
yeah, once we do the driveways, we're gonna have easements, that's correct.
Okay, that's fine.
Anybody have any questions or concerns? Violet, are you good? Yeah. Delisa?
Yep.
Anna?
I'm going to recuse myself.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks.
So I'll entertain a motion to approve the revised subdivision from 7 lots down to 6 with the back lot, the open space back lot going to the Littleton Cemetery.
Correct, that's fine. We have a notation on the plan that's saying it's not a building. 'Cause it doesn't have it.
And second it?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. About a pen? Next time, give us a little more notice.
I just filed it, I didn't know you guys didn't have it.
Yeah, we're not having a meeting for more than 21 days. Fine, but not every 2 weeks. Thank you.
Thank you.
That way we don't have to meet next week. will we?
17.
17th, yeah. I should know that. Okay.
So Mark, I think that's a good opportunity to just ask all of the applicants and in terms of their work with the planning board to try to get all of their documents to us the week before the meeting. Because, I mean, clearly we've seen the amount of pressure it puts on Maren, and the ability for us to actually review things really is limited if it's done, you know, the day of.
I agree totally. This was a pretty easy A&R that was basically.
I know, but I'm,
Is
I know,
that
we
why
get it.
you're recusing yourself?
abstaining
Because of that?
Yeah.
You know, and it's actually beneficial to the town. You're getting 2.5 acres, almost 2.5 acres, so.
Thank you.
And it keeps conservation.
Thank you very much. Have a good
Thank you.
evening.
Thank you.
Okay. 6:15, sort of. MPTA Community Zoning Bylaw. So, before you'll start, I'll just say that this has been an ongoing process that we are, because we are under mandate from the state to supply multifamily housing within half a mile of the train station in order to be compliant with how many cities and towns? I don't know, 150 of?
177.
There's 177 of us involved with this. We're trying to draft a bylaw to get to fall town meeting to address this issue, to make us compliant with the state. If we don't, there's a big litany of things that the state may possibly do to us, and our funding will go away from the state, so. And we're lucky, quote unquote, lucky that 600 of the 750 units we're supposed to supply are gonna be counted in from the common, from the projects that are going on at the common. So now we're dealing with just 150 on the property that's adjacent to the train station.
And one last thing to add is that this is part of the Littleton's master plan. This has always been on our master plan.
Just want to get it, that's how we're going to do it forward, so people, the 3 people, including the Tories, that are watching this tonight can follow what we're doing.
Thank you very much.
Thank
With
you.
your permission, Mr. Chairman, I'll start.
Absolutely.
So for the record, my name is Emily Ennis from Ennis Associates, and I am the lead consultant on the technical assistance that we're giving you for this project. I'm also working with RKG Associates. They are not with me today, but that was a good précis. I have a presentation for you. The first part, we don't need to go through in depth because it's really a review of what we've talked about already. But I know Maren has been keeping a good website of everything. So that first part, that planning process overview, which we'll see, is really the review of how we got to where we are today. Today, what I want to do is talk to you a little bit about how we took where we were from the last meeting and the direction that we received from the board. The types of things that go into zoning, and then a very high-level overview of the draft zoning that you have in front of you for comment. I don't expect to go into huge amounts of detail tonight. It's really more to sort of get you and anybody else who may be listening oriented with why the zoning says what it is. And then I'm going to call out some things that, I'd like you to think about that might be useful to add to the zoning or represents a potential change from how you do things now. So that's where we're going to go. So the planning process, this is obviously a test or a process where we tested to find out if you complied or not, and now we're going into the part where we're actually drafting the zoning for the parts to get you to full compliance. This is a schedule. We're here now on August 17th, and I'll talk a little bit more about where we're going at the end. And then we had started with a series of public meetings to get a visual preference idea of what people wanted for in housing, start to think about how that actually related to the Littleton Station area, because as you know, we already knew that the Common would contribute to this, so this was our area of focus. Went through several iterations of that and ended up July 20th with the final iteration. And one of those iterations was a potential concept that perhaps the lot right next to the MBTA lot could be brought down into a 10 or so acre lot and be zoned specifically for the town's needs. And that's what we're working on now. So we have the draft zoning to just start off the conversations. And this is how we start to look at it. So we're looking at this Littleton Station multifamily district, which would be a partial lot of that yellow lot, which we've talked about before. It's actually currently parcel R113-0, otherwise known as 145 Foster Street. It's got a small amount of excluded land on this particular parcel, which is important for considering how the math works for the MBTA communities. And we had presented 2 meetings ago an illustrative concept that talked about what happened if there were only 10 or so acres zoned for the MBTA Communities Act, which would require, and I want to be very clear on that, which would require the property owner to either do an A&R or otherwise subdivide the land to get to the 10 acres. So this is not something that the town can just do on its own, and your TV, that one doesn't like me anymore, but that one's fine. So I want to be very clear that the property owner has to be part of this. You don't get a 10-acre site out of this without talking to the property owner. Right now, it's zoned Industrial A. It's next to a residential zoning district, and if you look at the Industrial A zone, that has implications for certain setbacks. And then we're showing, as I said, with this illustrative plan, this conceptual plan, a portion that's right next to the train track and right near the highway as what we use to test. I will say that this particular exact layout is not something that the property owner has proposed, nothing that looks exactly like this. This was a conceptual plan. But it does allow me to start talking about how we would develop zoning for a parcel like this. So thinking about where the height would go as as you start thinking about zoning, how much development would be allowed. Putting height up next to the highway is something we discussed. Height next to the MBTA, not height next to the Foster Street border there. This is the 3D of the what I showed you before. So there's this idea of what's the absolute height of the building versus the fact that they have significant topography on this site, and there may be ability to reduce the apparent height of the building based on the topography. And also how the perception of height is influenced by how far away it is from Foster Street. I know the Foster Street residents were very concerned about something that would be right up on top of them.
Excuse me.
No worries. Ah, beautiful. We are back. So the other thing that we talked a little bit about was building types. So with this, obviously there are 3 larger buildings shown. There's some distinct advantages to doing taller buildings on a smaller site, which means if you go up, you have more open space, you're not crowding those in. But as you do zoning, you like to think of multiple opportunities. So while we would certainly want to consider zoning for the mid-height multifamily, you could, as the planning board, also zone for these other types. The way the draft is written now, it's agnostic on what types you're showing. It just says how tall, how far away from the borders, but it is possible to get more specific, and that's just something to consider. And this shows you how, if you have more buildings, how many buildings you need of each type to get close to that 150 units. The other thing when we start thinking about is not only the height of the buildings and the type of the buildings, but the types of buffers that you might have. So no build buffers. Now these are, again, the way this conceptual design is shown, there are significant no build buffers from the residential zoning district and from Foster Street, depending if the property owner does choose to subdivide the land. These are, again, existing industrial districts, so the question would be, what are they doing with the other part of the land? And that's certainly something for discussion. In addition to the height and the buffers, there are development standards that we would start proposing. So starting with the curb cut, how does a property interact with with Foster Street? What are the standards for the roadway in terms of development standards, parking, a common open space as shown in this, the buffers as shown by the green outline. So again, these are all things that can come into zoning. So moving from, okay, we've shown this, here are the different things to think about, let's talk about the draft zoning itself. So it is based on the sample zoning that HLC has posted on their website to be used for the MBTA Communities Act. So we started with that, and these are the sections in that sample zoning. And what you have in front of you to start thinking about is my modification to base it on what Littleton needs, right? It's the opportunity to take the sample zoning that could be used by all 177 cities and towns and narrow it down to what's appropriate for this site. So there is a purpose, a draft purpose that says what, and you'll be familiar from this with this, I'm sure, from your own zoning, but the purpose of this particular zoning, so production of housing sizes and types, locating housing within walking distance of public transit, preserving open space by having fewer buildings, encouraging connections between the commuter rail station and a community multi-use path, and you're going to see this comes in later, and increasing the municipal tax space. You may like all of these, you may want to strike some, you might want to add some, but this is, again, the draft. The establishment and applicability says that this is a single lot or a single parcel to be created, and it's likely going to be between 10 and 12 acres. And I say that because we know there's some excluded land there. I don't know yet how they're, I know that they're working on a concept plan. I don't know yet what that final plan will be for the zoning. So I've just put it in there. Uses permitted as of right, multifamily housing. I had suggested a maximum residential density. I understand from a conversation I had today with somebody who has been talking to somebody else at HLC, another consultant, that there might be a prohibition on maximum residential densities, so I need to look into that more. I will also take this opportunity to say that the HLC released new guidelines today, some modifications to the compliance guidelines. I've had a skim through them. I have not gone through them line by line to understand how much, if anything, has an impact on the draft zoning you have before you. So that is a to-do item. And then accessory uses as parking. I should also say at this point that this is established as a new zoning district and not an overlay district, which means for the acres of this parcel, that industrial A would go away and it would solely be multifamily. And that's why I mentioned that the other parts might stay as industrial A, but this would be this new multifamily district. The dimensional standards as they are now and as shown on the slide are actually the industrial A standards except for the height. And the reason I put that in is because as the time I was drafting this for you, I didn't have any other information on what that parcel would look like. So when it talks about setbacks from residential district or setback from the road or the minimum lot area, lot frontage, that's all your existing industrial A. The maximum building height is based on those conceptual studies that I and my team members did. So it's a maximum building height of 55 feet. But if you look in the dimensional standards section of the zoning, you'll see that there is a height bonus proposed for the creation of that multi-use path. So coming out of the master plan you mentioned earlier is the idea of having a community path, community trail that would attach to the commuter rail. In order to do that, it would need to go over this property. So anticipating that as a potential public benefit for discussion, the idea is that the public benefit is the connection and construction of that multi-use path in exchange for an additional story or additional number of feet to allow additional height. Again, that is something for you to consider. It is proposed to tie in with your master plan and just for you to think about, is that worth it? Is that something that you feel is appropriate for this area and ties back to that purpose? The other thing that's in there is this looks like, or certainly the way it was done in this conceptual diagram, is this is a type of campus plan, right? There's not internal, so there's one sort of street that gets around there, but otherwise it's parking and it's 3 buildings that are kind of related to each other and not to a grid of internal streets. And so in this dimensional standards section, you'll see that there is a recommendation for distances between buildings. Bless you. Distances between buildings based on the type of wall to window relationship. So it is closer if it's a wall to wall. They would be further apart if it's a wall to window, and further apart even more so if it's a window to window, to make it more comfortable for people so they're not necessarily looking directly through the window of the previous building. Again, that's something that would relate to a campus plan. Should the property owner come back and say, no, I plan to do a grid, we would then start having to think about internal setbacks. Off-street parking, we tested it as 1.5 parking spaces per unit, which is very appropriate for something that is located next to a transit station. We did suggest a 1 bicycle space per unit. I think if the proponent has some experience on recent construction of the number of appropriate bicycle spaces per unit, that would be something worth discussing. 1 bicycle space per unit sounds very reasonable until you try and find 150 spaces to park bicycles. So I am certainly open to your guidance and any input there. And then the general development standards are primarily those that came out of the sample zoning. I tried to, I've gone through them, I've pulled some that don't make sense for this type of development. They do have quite a few design standards for buildings that are multiple buildings on a lot, so you want to think about those. And again, we're talking about a lot that has a lot of topography, a lot of wetlands. The sample zoning has waivers to allow flexibility from development standards as long as the purpose of the zoning is complied with or addressed. So that's why that purpose is so important. And then finally, 2 other things to think about. The affordability in your draft zoning is based on the requirements of the compliance guidelines. So 10% affordability rounded down to the nearest unit, and the unit affordability is set at no less than 80% of the area median income, and I just put that in for reference. The other thing is site plan review. You do have site plan review, as you know, in your own bylaws. This establishes some standards that are slightly different, slightly more detailed. So it's up to you whether you want it just to refer back to your current standards or whether you want to establish new ones as part of this. And so this brings me to the key questions, that lightning quick overview. Is the purpose appropriate? Do you feel that there are things that should be changed in there? Are the dimensional standards appropriate? And some of that will be once we get the final layout from the property owner. We'll want to have a look at that. Do you want the zoning to define specific building types? Should the planning board consider that height bonus for connecting the community path across the property? One thing that actually Maren brought up, because of your focus as a community on affordability, should the planning board consider greater density for, or more density for greater affordability? I think what's important there is, although the guidelines have that 10%, 80% rule, you can go beyond that if you do a feasibility analysis, but you can also do a bonus and say, okay, this is your minimum requirement, but if you want more, we would like more affordability, and we'll give you something in exchange for that. So something to consider. And then finally, should additional, 2 things. Should additional development standards be considered? So you had design guidelines or design standards for the 40R district that you considered. I did go back and review those, and most of those are really focused on a mixed-use environment instead of a multifamily environment. So I could certainly, if you want, go back through and pull out those that would be applicable to a multifamily environment, and be happy to do so. But that's why I didn't just include the 40R standards, is because it was really focused on that mixed use. And then finally, do you want to use the site plan provisions in here, or would you prefer just to point back to your other site plan? With that, happy to talk about discussion. I'm just going to briefly run through the next steps, which is right now I'm scheduled to deliver the final draft to you on September 14th. I do note that I'm actually booked and have been booked for about 6 months for a meeting that night, so unfortunately I can't present them to you on the 14th. I'll also be getting materials for town meeting to Maren for early September. Obviously, those can be tweaked for any decisions that you make on the 14th. And then from the 14th, you'll be going through your own approval process, which I'll be happy to support. And then obviously, we're aiming for the fall town meeting on November 1st. And that's a presentation I have for you. Again, very high-level overview, but I'm happy to go through any discussions you might have at this point.
Thank you. Obviously, the board has some questions. I'll let you guys ask your questions first, then we'll open it up to the public a little bit.
I'm just going to take notes.
Okay.
So a lot of this is predicated on the actual parcel definition. But it's likely that, especially when we relate it to dimensional setbacks, that it's going to, this project would be adjacent not to a residential area, but to the remainder of this property, which, what is the process for zoning that parcel?
I think that's up to you and to the property owner of how, probably not speaking into this, up to you and the property owner for how to discuss that. I've obviously been focused on the MBTA Communities
Okay.
Act parcel, yeah.
I'm just
I don't
mean,
want to, I don't have
I
any
think
direction
in
on
the
that,
big
yeah.
sort of picture, it was like, oh, well, that's going to be some kind of bonus community use. I don't know if that's going to happen, but in which case the dimensional requirements should, relate to that, not strictly speaking a residential setback.
Absolutely, and in fact, if you think of it as the way that it was shown in the conceptual illustration, and given community concerns about height and perhaps preference for pushing it back, I would anticipate that the final parcel ends up somewhere in that same region. You're probably not talking about a setback from Foster Street at that point either,
Right.
because you already know where the parcel's going to be. So I would agree, any setbacks are from the new parcels, new lots adjacent to whatever is created.
So then there's the issue of height. I personally am not interested in bonusing for extra height. That's just my opinion.
Even if you got a community path going through there?
No.
No, I agree with Jeff. I'm not interested in.
I mean, I think we don't need, I don't think we need to do that. I don't know.
I guess I assume the community path would just be a part of this.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, it
too.
would just be
Yeah,
part of the site.
yeah, oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, community path, yes, but a bonus.
Yeah, no, I mean, to me,
Yeah.
it just, that would
And I
be-
do, I do want to say that these diagrams are great, but they do, they gloss over the topography, which would be much less of an impact on, I think if we did a balloon test, I bet you wouldn't see the tops of the buildings from Foster Street.
Probably not.
Right.
If they're,
Especially being
even if they're
20
5 or
acres
6
away.
stories.
yeah.
The affordability, going back to the other part of our, our application for 550 King, we had greater affordability at 550 King, as I recall. Didn't we have 20%?
No, we're 10%.
We're
but
10%.
doing more
We're
senior
doing more,
housing.
okay. And where does the 80% is an MBTA,
It is in the compliance
it's
guidelines.
a minimum.
It is, do I have it with me? Hang on, let me see if I have it with me. It's always best to go directly to the compliance guidelines, which I do on a regular basis. It is, will consider an affordability requirement to be consistent with as-of-right zoning as long as the zoning requires not more than 10% of the units in a project to be affordable, and the cap on the income of families or individuals who are eligible to occupy the affordable units is not less than 80% of area median income.
So that is a minimum. In other words.
Yes, in other words, you
everything
can
would
have
be
it
80% AMI or potentially higher.
higher. Yes, that is
I don't
correct.
know about that. You know,
Well, the state's saying it has to be 80.
Yeah,
Leave it
that's
at 80.
true, that's true. And I guess it would be up to us to push for the 80 and not 120 or whatever.
I think we'd say all of them have to be at 80.
Yeah, okay. Is there any state guidance or state requirements for bedroom size, bedrooms?
You are not allowed to limit the bedroom size or number of bedrooms.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. And that would be up to the developer?
Yep.
Okay. It might be helpful if you go back to
Certainly.
the key questions.
Yep,
Yeah.
absolutely.
I thought that the provisions of our previous plan, the 40R planning we did, were great. I would like to see you go through and pull out,
I
because
agree.
it gives a look and feel to the, to the property that I think we all enjoy. Should the planning board?
Can I add to that for a second? Because in addition to the design standards, we had also, it was always going to be a mixed use, right?
Right.
And I know because of the state, then it became residential, but now, based on the email you sent today and this revision in the guidelines, it looks like they're willing to give credit for zoning districts that require, they're like mixed use. So, Maren, what exactly does that mean? Does that mean that we can zone this as mixed use?
I looked through that quickly, and it looked to me like it was specifically relating to existing downtown areas.
But if we're changing from industrial A
Yeah.
to something, to residential, or should we move to mixed use?
I don't see, in my view, there's not I can't imagine a developer, unless we required it, proposing a mixed use on that site.
But that's not our decision. It's our decision in terms of zoning, but I'm talking just in terms of zoning. Should we zone it as mixed use? Because it gives more flexibility.
Okay, well, I don't
You
know.
can, even without the changes, you can have multifamily as an as-of-right use. You can have mixed use as either as-of-right use or a special permit use within the same district. I did not propose that because during the public comment, we heard that people really wanted just multifamily. But if you want to zone for both, you can do that, and then, as you say, it's up to the developer.
That just seems to add much more flexibility. I mean, if people wanted to put like a little coffee shop in there, I mean, you could have.
We always did talk about 50,000 square feet of retail down there to support that.
I don't think it was that high. I thought it was like 10 or 20,000.
Whatever.
50,000 is a lot of square feet.
I think that was when it was much bigger.
Yeah, okay.
And again, remember when we did all those charrette meetings? Three years ago, pre-pandemic, people were really interested in having a community feel and having like a coffee shop or a whatever, a yoga studio. I mean, I don't know.
Convenience store.
Right.
And on the other hand, for the people who are against the traffic flow of this project, they may not want to see any other use except residential.
But this is going to be for the people who live in that area.
Or the
I
commuters.
mean, it's not like you and I are going to drive there. It's not going to increase traffic. It's going to be a
But your
neighborhood.
point about just leaving it open, and you said it would be through a special permit,
You
you
could
as
do
of
it
right
either way.
multifamily and a
Yeah,
special
you could do
permit.
it that way.
I mean, it's not like, I'm not suggesting that we increase the acreage. I'm just suggesting we keep it open
See,
and more
am.
flexible.
I'm suggesting we increase the acreage.
That's
I'm suggesting, if at all possible, can we get past the, as you said, you don't know yet, the density of 15 per acre. I'd
She
like to
told
see-
us last time we couldn't, though.
She's saying it
Wait,
may have changed.
I'm sorry, did you wanted, what do you mean by getting past it? You
I
want-
would still like to see this,
He wants it less dense.
I want it
Less
less dense.
Okay.
Because I think we'd really like to see as many 4 units, 5 units, 6 units as we can, and spread them out through the property so it looks and feels like Foster Street, rather than have, and I know we're gonna hide a couple, maybe one or two high-rises behind the topography there, but when we did the first rendition 3 years ago, all of that was basically, you had a couple way in the back and a lot of townhouses all over the place. I'd still like to go back to as much of that as we can.
But that
We-
would bring development up to the abutters.
No, when you still got 20 acres, maybe we get another 3 or 4, we only need 3 or 4 acres to do it.
Well,
Still
I-
keep the number of units to the
Right.
same, but then
Rather-
that would change that
I mean, I don't
ratio,
think
and
we
last
have
time you
designed
told
it,
us we
but,
couldn't do
She
that.
just said it might have changed, she doesn't know
No,
yet.
what I'm saying is you couldn't have a cap on it. It's my understanding that that may be, put that aside for one moment. I completely understand what you're talking about, of having it look more like Foster Street. My question to you is, and I don't mean this to be facetious in any way, shape, or form, does it matter if the parcel can't be, if the buildings on the parcel can't be seen from Foster Street? Does how it looks in terms of relating to Foster Street matter?
I agree with you if you want to
Right.
hide them behind some of the,
Yeah, and that's just what I'm trying to get to.
But still, let's
yeah.
say we can get 70 units behind the hill there and they're out. Then the other 80 will look like Foster Street, if we can get it to work that way.
The
Well, I
ones
mean, not
closest
like-
to the residence should look
Correct.
like Foster Street.
But you're not, but they're not gonna be 1 acre lots.
No, they're not, they're
Yeah,
gonna be
yeah,
4
yeah, yeah.
units.
Okay,
Oh,
so it would-
little-
it would just give them more open space between units and just be prettier.
Exactly.
So
It'd be-
then I might suggest zoning for those typologies that I mentioned. And, you know, you're
think-
going to get to the density level, but you're allowed to have these different building typologies, and that gives the developer,
So what is
Right.
what is the big picture of increasing the acreage? Is that?
I would have to go back and.
I mean, does
yeah.
that mandate more density? Because what we were trying to get at was
Right.
150 units, period. Yeah.
You are going to find it very difficult to get to a precise number of units. The
Okay.
math.
Well, I know.
The
but-
math is not real
I know,
life. is what I'm
I
trying to
understand, but
say,
I
yeah.
mean, we're not talking, we're not talking about 200 units, we're talking
No, it's-
about 153 or 148 or 142 or, but it's sort
If
of.
we go
for the-
beyond 150, this is going to be an uphill battle.
Well, if it's
You need
152,
to
if we
understand.
go to
Right,
160,
right.
stuff, okay, so
So like a plus or, we should do a plus or minus
Plus or minus
5%
a
or,
couple,
I mean, something, you know?
And you're not going to be able to zone for that specifically. Where you're going to be able to get to where your units are is how are you controlling it by height, by coverage, by the boundaries that are used, the buffers that are used.
So when will you
Well,
So
know?
can I comment on something
Yeah.
that Ms. Ennis just said? So I'll just say it pretty plainly. So we had another consultant that came through here, I don't know, about 5, 6 years ago, and said, don't worry about senior housing. It's all going to be based off of the design guidelines, and developers will do what they're supposed to do. Yeah, well, we got screwed royally, and I don't want that to happen again. So when we want something very specifically, we want it very specifically for a reason. And what I hear my colleagues saying is, we want the units that are closest to Foster Street to look like Littleton, to be smaller, 4 units, 6 units. We want to be able to have the height in the back. We want to be able to minimize the number to as close to that 150 as possible. So that's what we want. And then it's up to the developer to figure out how to make that happen.
Well, I'll stop you there. I kind of want you to figure out how to get it to work and then bring it to the developer, or work in conjunction with the developer. Nothing against, we've got a consultant, I'm trying to give you as much of the marching orders as I can.
Right.
So that when we bring this to town meeting, people are gonna have a rough idea of what this is gonna look like, and that we really need you to do that. Does that make more sense?
And we want a community path through there.
Oh, yeah, that's-
Multi-use,
yeah, that's- yeah.
like, yeah, pedestrian and bike.
So, couple of things on that.
Oh, wait, I
And
hear you.
mixed use.
Absolutely hear what you're saying. I will not be able to answer that tonight, obviously. I need to go back. I did ask Chris, who you remember had done the illustrations on here. So I don't know if you can see my hand here.
Right, yep.
But I had asked him what the distance from the closest corner of this building was to Foster Street, and it was about 500-ish feet, if I remember correctly. So that's why I'm pushing a little bit to talk about what you mean by the houses closest to Foster Street, because right now your industrial zoning has a setback distance from Foster Street of 80 feet.
Yeah, we're gonna.
Which
Yeah, that's
means
not-
that if you're
okay.
standing on Foster Street and you see buildings 80 feet away, you're probably going to see at least some of those buildings. If you're looking to 500 feet away, that's why I was asking, and again, I'm not being facetious when I ask this, but that's why I was asking, does it matter whether or not the buildings look like the ones on Foster Street? Because they are so much
Well,
further
yes,
away.
because
And that-
again-
That's where I was coming
Yeah,
from
but
with
again,
that,
it
yeah.
gets back to our design standards. We do want, even though they may not be seen,
Yeah.
just from a design
And that's
perspective,
fine,
we want
that's
it to
the
look like
information
little
I
tin- yeah,
need,
yeah,
right? So that's why,
yeah,
that's why I was
yeah.
careful to say, I'm not being facetious,
right.
I'm trying to get your preferences.
It's not just about the feel, it's the fact that we're looking at something that's probably gonna be, except for the high-rise, we don't know what's gonna have, for sale units. And that's the niche that we're looking for as well. First-time home buyers, empty nesters, everything else like that. If we can give them small little units and as many of them as we can, it's gonna be a better fit with the residents at Foster Street. We're trying to, we've heard what they had to say, and that it's not like they want all these different people in there that they don't know. They want people to buy into the community and be part of the community, so that would be more for sale units. So the more for sale units that we can get on this, I think the better off we're going to be.
So
And I
what-
don't have a problem with the two of you sitting down together and moving the area where it is. If it has to come closer to Foster Street for the housing part of it, it's okay. If we use the topography, if we have to put one building or two buildings, okay.
Is there a potential for sub-districts within the overall parcel?
Yes.
You could designate a, 5 to 6 story multifamily, part toward the blue and the interstate, and then the part forward to some other density.
Similar to what we did for King Street Common, where it's form-based
Yeah.
code
Yeah,
in
the
front end.
form-based
and-
code area was different.
What
than-
about infrastructure? Can we put infrastructure outside of this? Can we put parking on the 20 acres that we're not going to build on? Or does it all have to be in the, because the density has to be there, but it doesn't say the parking has to be there, right?
That's a good question.
Can I just say that you are great creative thinkers on this?
Well, most developers are, so.
I'm not, no.
I know, but I find developers are really.
I'm just
I
trying to,
can't answer the question on the parking right now. I can say that we can certainly look at sub-areas or sub-districts of the overall district. The parcel size might have to change under that, but then you would have that average, right? You'd have a higher density in one part and a lower in the other. Same way that you're doing with this in King Street, where those are averaging out to what you need, that could average out. I could have a look at that and see what that means.
I'm just trying to expand your 10 or 12 acres to 20 acres so we can have more multifamily units and not have to rely on the big buildings to get us there.
So just to confirm, it's not my acres?
No, I know.
No, I understand what you're saying. I'm happy to go forward and talk. What I'm thinking, what I'm hearing from you, though, is this idea of a building typology in there so that there's flexibility. There's a specificity in terms of the types of buildings that are desired, but also that flexibility that a developer can come in to use either one of those. I think the point about the setbacks being from the industrial A, unless there are other conversations about that are not part of what I'm doing here, that makes sense. But if we're going to do sub-districts, there's probably going to be some sort of buffers between those that I need to think about. We're now potentially moving closer to Foster Street, which means I need to rethink distances from
There's
Foster
a
Street.
natural
so this is
barrier, though,
helpful.
with the, the excluded land among, most of the abutters that would be affected.
Can you put the map back up?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I see, because the excluded land is between,
Yeah, I
those
think I've got a
houses.
clearer one. Let me just jump up to.
No, that was good. That's the one I
Yeah.
wanted to say. That's,
Yeah.
that
So,
one.
so the issue is.
No, the other one.
Keep going.
There.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Why
Yep.
can't, see the yellow line that goes across, that goes to, it's basically the back land of the nursing home.
Yeah.
Why couldn't we put residential back there? And that keeps the buffer in the front, we make it all the way to the lot line, put the houses there, which the people are gonna see from Foster, but they're gonna look like houses.
So we did some, or sorry, go ahead.
Well,
You go
as I
first.
understood it from the previous meetings, the overall count has to do with, we have to get a certain amount of density.
Right.
So the larger parcel you do, the more units you have to build.
Unless, and she's gonna look into it, unless they've relaxed that a little bit, because she's not sure about that, and if the infrastructure, meaning the parking, can be outside of the.
I don't,
That's going, so I'm glad you brought that up. So this was the very first set of scenarios we did, and obviously the unit count was a lot higher than you wanted. But it was looking at the 300 units. I don't remember the precise that got, because that was 300 over 30-something acres. But when you spread it out, you will have to go higher in terms of units because of the amount of acreage that you're adding. So that's where the math comes back in again.
That's what
Yeah.
we were saying. And you said,
You might be able to relax it, we don't know yet.
We know that King Street gives you some flexibility from the 15 acres. It's not that HLC will relax it. It's that we will need to go back and look precisely at the math of King Street. But again, I want to warn the board of trying to get too precise.
Well, I don't care.
So when are we gonna do that piece of it that you're just
Well,
describing?
I've got to do it before September 14th if you're
Okay.
going for fall town meetings. So
Okay.
this is helpful direction. But yes, I will have my marching orders.
And if you're gonna find out if the infrastructure can be outside of the.
I will ask that. Let me just, you were talking, so I didn't write it down earlier.
I
but will
don't see
ask
how
for
that
it.
would help.
Because you can
Yeah.
all the parking, or you can put housing where the parking is, and they're
Yeah,
out.
but parking will be inconvenient, and who wants to have that?
No, it could be right beside the building, but the lot line is right there, and then all of a sudden, all the parking's on the
That,
open
I think
space.
that'll get tricky.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, but you're good.
But I will ask the
But,
question.
if there are incentives to be offered, I would offer incentives on the multi-story buildings to have structured parking, or at least
Oh, yeah,
one.
underneath, yeah.
I mean, we have, the topography, so it would be open, wouldn't have to be ventilated. And that's a big selling feature, for people moving into apartments in the winter.
I'm just
And that
going
would-
back to your building type. So yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, do we have any other questions? So we're running a little late, we should probably open it up. Are we good for right now?
So, hold on, so I'd like to go back to Delisa's point about the multi-use and to see, how the board feels about that. Are we all on board with that?
I think we
So
should
that
have
she
some
can-
sort of multi-use down there.
I think you should allow it, but I don't think we should require it.
well, this is a zoning question. We either have to zone
But
it
we-
as
we
mixed
could-
have
use.
to,
We could
because
say
it's a-
that I think, allow it, but.
But isn't
You
that
can't
a zoning
require it.
question?
It's
We
in
either
contemplation.
zone it
You can't
residential.
require it.
Yeah, we cannot
Isn't it
require
part of the zoning now if we leave the industrial?
Actually, she has a good, Delisa has a good question. For mixed use, you can, the problem was some communities were requiring commercial as part of any construction.
Okay.
So what I think you're asking is can you allow it, can you include it, mixed use in the zoning, some commercial in the zoning? And I'm hearing that you want to. but
Right.
I'm not hearing that you want to require it as part of a multifamily development.
So,
Do we want to
Yeah, I
require
think
it?
we do.
You can't.
We can't.
You cannot
We can't.
be
Okay,
compliant.
okay,
You
all right.
can
So that's an easy
allow it.
decision.
Okay, good. Then yes, that's what we want.
We can make it optional.
Okay.
And have the requirements have the guidelines and everything for it.
Okay.
Bartlett, what do you?
No, I agree that we should allow it. I don't know how much commercial 150 units can support, but I think we should allow it, and I would like to actually see some small commercial there.
We
As I
don't
think
have
the
small
people on Foster
commercial
Street
where
do.
the rest of the town
Yeah.
is, so.
Yeah, a coffee
But I
shop.
could
But
see
you know, it could be
something.
like a little coffee shop, you know, that's, because think about all the people coming to take
Well,
tea.
that is the point, yeah. But that's.
Leave it as an option. If it doesn't
2,500
work for a
square feet.
developer, it doesn't work, you
Yeah.
know?
Okay.
Any other specifics other than the small coffee shop? Do you want to allow retail or, you know?
Oh, I don't think we want to designate what kind of.
Or you-
Or
you
the other
normally-
option is
yeah.
similar to what you did for the Area B overlay district. You just listed out some uses that you were very comfortable with.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or similar.
I think we had done that in the previous rendition from 2021.
Great, I will look at that.
Does that give you enough to do? in
I think
the next
that gives
couple of
me-
weeks?
Actually,
Yeah,
I would ask if you could please put those questions back, because
Yeah,
I
of
think a
course.
lot of those weren't answered for you. And if you're truly not going to be coming back to us for a month, then we need to make sure that we've answered those questions. From a purpose perspective, I know that based off of the last zoning that we did in 2021, there were a couple of specific ones. I think, Delisa alluded to one of them about the fact that this is really part of our master plan, and that we are fulfilling that particular aspect of it, I think to promote the goals and policies of the Littleton Master Plan. And then also in terms of actually identifying that we are doing this because the state is requiring us to do it.
Is there just a general comment about, sustainability, this, that, the other thing? Because this is on everyone's minds anywhere that there's transit.
Right.
It's the transit-oriented housing,
Mhm.
all over the country.
Absolutely, I can add those.
Dimensional standards, I mean, you're going to go through a lot of those from the design standards, but from a dimension perspective, should we go back to that? Because you had mentioned that you use the industrial ones.
Well, I think the guidance that you just gave me about expanding it and the different use types, that's going to inform my going back to the dimensional standards, so I think I've got enough on that.
Yeah, we don't want to do height bonus.
But we do want the
types.
So just
Oh, one
as a
on the site plan.
general development thing, asking a property owner to put a public use path across their property without some sort of benefit to them. Are you going to buy an easement? Are you asking them to construct the path? You're basically asking them to give you something for free.
Yes.
That's not usually done.
Yes.
Okay, I'm just letting you know that they may say no.
Construct a path on an easement they donate.
That is, I'm going to step aside and let you talk to the property owner about that. That is out of my purview. I'm just doing the zoning.
Site plan review, the question is, do we want to use our existing site plan review, which is what we've been using throughout?
Which is fine. I just wanted to make sure that we had the
I
discussion,
don't think we
so.
want to change anything, we want
Well,
to,
there's an entire appendix related to that, I believe, in the new guidelines that they sent, so we might want to at least take a look at that. There's lots of appendices, actually. I think the other question related to site plan is that, and it's obviously the way that it's written, but it feels a little squishy about the fact that site plan is required. It's not a may, it's a,
Okay, so you brought up an important point. It does not have to be required. So does the town of Littleton, I assumed you do, which is
Yeah.
why I put it in, but just that's a good thing to confirm.
Yes.
Yes, okay.
and then special permit, right? Can we
Ah.
talk about that?
You
No.
cannot have a special permit for this. It is an as-of-right use.
all right, so that, she answered, but the state is mandating that it has to be an as of right, okay.
Yeah, that is the law. It is an
Yeah, I saw that
as-of-right
there's like a
use.
few stipulations in which a special permit, we could do it, like on
If
the
you wanted
height.
to do the mixed use, that you could have a special permit for the mixed use. Like, for example, a coffee shop with residential above,
Yeah.
you could totally do that with a special permit, and I'm happy to put that in if that's of interest. But the multifamily housing must be site plan review as the maximum.
In that case, we definitely want to make sure that that site plan review is what we want,
Okay.
if that's going to be our only criteria by which to review it.
So I'll just leave that open, and maybe Mara, you and I can talk about how we coordinate that with your existing site plan review.
Do you want to meet not privately, but you want to meet with us before you meet, say if you want to meet with Anna and myself before you meet on the 17th, would that help?
On the
you?
14th, before I turn it into you for the 14th?
Yes.
Yes, let's talk about a
A
time. we
meeting
could
with
do
us,
that.
the landowner,
Yep,
is that, do you want to do that, Anna?
Yeah, that would be great.
Okay, so why
excellent,
don't
yeah.
we plan on that?
Okay, great.
Just like we're doing with everything else now, we'll just,
And,
Maren can coordinate it.
and something else that I think, I recognize that we are creating a zoning bylaw, but under site design, it talks about open space. And so there's this whole question about that industrial portion over there. And since it's going to remain industrial, that really shouldn't be part of this conversation, right?
But we don't,
But is it remaining industrial? Wouldn't we, as a package, propose a rezoning for that also?
yes, that's what we talked about,
We
was
can't
that
include it- We can't include it in this
The
effort.
MBTA.
But, I mean, we can't not let that,
we can't keep that as industrial. I mean, that's what we talked about,
I mean,
was,
I
was
think
was
that's
turning that into
sort of a
conservation
covenant with the
land or,
neighborhood, you know, that would go to,
Well, we need, let me finish, then you can, yeah, we're gonna need to,
we have to talk to the
Yeah,
property
I
owner.
think it's a dual deal. I mean,
Well, yeah, because I'll tell you, me personally, I don't want to put residential in one area and then have the rest remain industrial A, because then we're going to end up with warehouses there too.
So I think there's a lot of ideas about what that could be used for. I mean, Maren and I were approached by Park and Rec, about, could there be athletic fields out there? So I think that there's just a lot of thoughts about what could be over there.
If I could just jump in on the open space and the zoning, that was solely referring to open space within the parcel that's being zoned itself, not anything, just want to clarify that for anyone who may be listening.
Okay, well, that's important to note, that it's just for the space we're talking about, because the note on 2C doesn't say that, so.
Oh, okay, I'll have to pull it back up. It's the space that we're talking, I think when I was thinking about that, I was also wondering what was going to happen with the rest of them, but my purview is just for the parcel itself,
So-
so.
I think I hear you all saying that we're doing the piece of that parcel to zone it for MBTA, and then the other piece of it, we also have to deal with separately.
yes.
Right.
Okay,
Probably at the same town meeting.
Yeah, I
well, we
mean,
have to have an answer from the.
yeah, I mean, we have to have it like in writing. It's got to be,
I know, but we have to talk to the developer
Right.
about.
I mean, the
potential-
landowner.
The landowner.
Yes.
Well,
Yes.
so we need to have that discussion, so sooner we all sit down in the room and have that discussion about our.
But could you, Maren, look at what existing zoning classification might fit for the purposes that we envision on this other parcel? In terms of allowed uses?
You could put it for
not allowed
retail,
uses.
I mean residential,
You could do, as I'm thinking, we could do a residential and,
And if they
you know,
decide to build
acre
some houses on
zoning
it,
and, you know.
at least it's not industrial anymore. Maybe we could
But
do that.
then, whoa.
I
Whoa,
would
whoa,
not
whoa,
be
whoa.
okay with that.
Yeah, I would not either.
Well,
I mean,
I'm just saying,
we're
is
dealing
there,
with- hold on,
do
hold
we
on,
have to
hold on.
reinvent the wheel, or is there a zoning use classification that we could do?
Okay. But having more houses built there, that's going totally counter to what we discussed, which was, we're going to have limited number of units, and the rest of it will be open space, and that was something we were going to discuss with the property owner, whether it's open space, a big community park, fields, TBD, but not more houses.
Right.
I mean, then, yeah, I'm not in supportive of that,
Nor
or
am
not
I.
in support. Just saying.
Okay, but we have to talk to, that. We can't make that decision,
Right.
we have to talk to them.
But until we have that decision, then this is,
So isn't that a
remains up in the
conversation that they
air.
should be coming before the planning board to have an informal discussion
Why don't we
then?
why don't we have an informal discussion with everybody as we try to lay this out and see what we don't know what they want to do with the rest of the parcel.
Yeah.
Why don't we find out from them when we get everybody together? Me, you, Emily, Buckley, Bob,
Okay.
Maren, and hopefully somebody from that represents the Longs as well as you. Let's all sit down and then put a bigger meeting together once we've got that. Makes it easier. at some point, sooner rather than later,
Yeah.
within the next 2 weeks. Because we should have an answer
Yes.
before September.
Yes.
Okay.
If we
So-
plan to do it that way, then yes, we need
Yeah,
to
let's
have
do
that
that.
done. I have one final comment, thank you for that. Water Resource District. So this whole property is in the Water Resource District, and I know with King Street Common, there was a section that actually addressed the relationship to that Water Resource District, so if we could make sure to add something to that effect,
Great idea.
thank you.
Okay.
And I think I have guidance from the last points on the design standards and site plan review already.
Do you want to quickly speak, and then I'm
Yeah,
going
it'll be quick, yeah.
and then I'll open up to the public if anybody wants to speak.
I don't have a presentation. First of all, for the record, Robert Buckley, Raymond Brossage, I apologize. I don't-
Casual's
this-
fine.
This is the first meeting I've ever come public, 38 years, casual, so.
It's
I wasn't intending to be here
August,
tonight.
it's August.
Right, right, well, I wish you could tell some of the other boards.
We all have shorts on under this table.
Yeah,
Right, right.
exactly.
First of all, we hope to have a conceptual plan within the next week or so that will differ a little bit from what was shown because it will push things further away from Foster Street when you look at it. So that we're working on that. I have a draft here, but I'm not authorized to release it yet, but it's 10 acres. And we've had some very productive discussions on some of the zoning issues and how to do this in the way that achieves the 150, the 15 per acre in a manner that minimizes or the impacts from a visual site perspective, but also maximizes the availability of other land. Now, as I said at the first meeting, in order to make sure that we protect our rights, we are going to file a preliminary subdivision plan to freeze the zoning. That doesn't mean we won't sit down and talk about some of the other issues that have been raised tonight in terms of what happens to the balance of the site. What I would strongly suggest is that to try to do that at a meeting, maybe we can have some discussions, but to try to do it at a town meeting where you zone something, the balance of the site, open space or conservation land, etc., without having a project designed or even know if it's feasible from a site conditions. I mean, you could zone property, doesn't mean you could build on it. I don't think the developer or the owners would be receptive to that because you just don't know. But that doesn't mean we wouldn't be willing to talk and perhaps come back with a template that works in the future, so you have some idea. But at least you'll have an idea that the 10 acres can be done for purposes of compliance. Because, as I said, there are two aspects. Zoning is one, gives you the key. I always use the analogy, gives you the key to unlock the door. The zoning permits you to come forward with a project. You get through the door, now you've got to design it and make sure that the topography, the soil conditions. The comment on parking, we actually have had a discussion with respect to infrastructure off-site to minimize impact. Parking is not one of the things I would advocate because it would make it non-financeable. Because people don't want to park across the street to come over and live in a residence. But there may be some things you can do by dropping the ratio down. Instead of 1.5, maybe it's 1.2, but having areas where you can do supplemental parking or visitor parking that locates it off-site. And also, the state has to look at this and say, is it real? Is it a real project? Can it be built?
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
I forwarded Mr. Long to the water department, and I know they've had a brief discussion, because one of the other things, maybe we can use the open space as expansion for our sewer system, because we're in need of that. I know they have had a brief discussion, I don't know where it is.
I've raised that a couple times. I'm trying to understand how that would work. I didn't hear anything that they're not agreeable to that.
Right.
But I don't know, someone raised it earlier that when you ask for concessions or benefits from the developer with no benefit, in terms of, bonuses or, someone may say, I'll donate this if I get this. But those are the discussions that should be happening.
We should, absolutely, that's what I'm getting at.
But, you know, once you understand what the lot would look like, then I think everyone would be talking in a little more clarity as to, you know, what are the impacts.
So one of the precedents for sewer is in exchange for a deeper affordability, the Hager Homestead project was allowed to connect to the town sewer, to the existing town sewer.
Yeah.
And, you know, so.
Yeah, we don't have that option either, right?
They don't.
No, but I'm just saying,
Yeah.
you know.
No, but there are things that, you know, there may be some trade-offs. We look at it this way. This is a worthwhile endeavor, and I believe our client is supportive of the town achieving that result in terms of compliance, and we've tried to be creative in terms of designing a lot that addresses some of the issues that were raised in terms of height, visibility, proximity. I do think having a mixed use, a small, no one's going to do retail or a major activity up there, but a coffee shop or something that could service people maybe even from the train station, who knows, is a worthwhile exploration, and having the ability to pursue that use may be worthwhile. May never happen, but having it in there may be an attractive amenity that once people are on site, they don't have to leave. So there's some planning initiatives there. So,
Okay.
but we will be filing a preliminary. I don't want to mislead people, and we're just trying to keep the conversation honest and open and preserve our rights, but also at the same time indicate that we're willing to talk about options. And maybe it's a different zoning district altogether, so, for the
Okay.
balance of the site.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Oh, you want really quick, then I'm going to open up to the public.
I'm just gonna clear my stuff out.
Oh, all right. Does anybody have any, Mr. Sanders? You've been waiting patiently. 2 minutes.
I'm speaking on this item here. You didn't do the public. but-
We're going to do it right after. I apologize. We didn't get a chance to do
That's
it.
all right, Mr. Chairman, that's all right. I think that one of the things that this board must present at the town meeting is that there are a lot of people in this town do not believe that if they vote no not to put this housing in, the state is going to do this, that, that, that. We need something from the state that says that if you don't put this housing through, this is what's going to happen.
There it is.
All right, well then, that's what people need to know. That's a concern there. I'm concerned about the environmental aspects of this. So, if the state is saying that you're going to put the housing in and requiring you to put the housing in, I want the discussion to include how you're going to handle the sewer from these apartments or housing or whatever the case is. The amount of land that's required to take care of the number that you're going to build, that needs to be discussed, that needs to be known. This saying, just putting the building up, how you going to deal with the sewer? And the other thing that this board may be not understanding, you're locked in at 243,000 gallons per day right now for the next 3 years. The only way you're going to get an increase in that is that you got to find further discharge. Now, Nick has a consultant, which I talked to him the other day, that is looking at the entire town of Littleton for most spaces for them to come in and give them this property, that property, that property, and so forth. And then they're going to, the commissioner is going to sit down and determine what other properties, what properties rather, that they would consider that they could do this increase. Now they're trying to understand that they can extend at the high school up to 300,000 gallons, but they're not sure right at this moment. But the state is not going to let you take in more sewer than you can discharge out. So you're going to have the discharge facility. Right now, they have that field set up right now for the 243,000 gallons up there. So on the environmental, I want to understand and know whatever you're going to build, I want to know how the waste is going to be disposed of.
Thank you. Anyone else? Any other questions, concerns? Nope, good. So we're gonna continue this.
So this is not a public hearing, so don't have to officially continue,
right.
but the next time we'll schedule this is for the September 14th meeting.
Just so everybody knows.
If we need an update at the 7th, we'll do
And
an update on the 7th.
Let us know when you're gonna have when we can all get together and at least address some of the issues that we need to do with the property owners. Okay, and then we'll report back to you on that. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Emily, if you have any
I still
questions.
have the permission to your staff to have discussions, and we'll get you the plan shortly.
Okay, perfect. Mr. Sanders correctly informed me that I did not allow public input. I'm sorry, I forgot to, in the haste to get going on this, I didn't. So, is anybody, Mr. Sanders, would you like the public input for 2 minutes?
Yes, sir.
All right, just a guess, you know.
I'm guessing right.
I'm pretty good at that. Ready, go.
You're so funny.
Thank you. You like my haircut?
Sure.
Anyway,
I just want to point out to this board, whether you realize it or not, there's a lot of talk out there about this board. And I think you ought to know the feedback. I'm a straight shooter. I'm gonna tell you what I'm hearing. I got stopped the other morning in Duncan there for about 15 minutes about this board. There were people thinking that this board is just going along with the developer, giving them whatever they want, and taking no concern about what the citizens are thinking and saying in the town of Littleton. They think that the citizens should be getting an opportunity to put more input in, and this board is really not doing it. So I'm just telling you what the word is out there and what they're saying out there about this board. And I can tell you, it's not nice, okay? It's not nice. And I'm going to step up and tell you, I think the board does a pretty fair job in dealing with the projects here in this town. You're not perfect, but nobody expects you to be perfect. But I think the thing that you probably could consider is giving a little bit more consideration of having more input in on projects from the people in the town, because they think with Sal's property up here at 550, they think you just gave away everything that was in the world to let them build. The quote that they told me, it was like they said, there's 1,600 apartments that's going to be built in this town within the next 8 years, of give or take. And I saw a guy say, well, it's 780 up there at 550, and it's probably a couple hundred over on 410 over there. But, people have that understanding of some information not being adequate. And that gets spread, and next thing you know, people saying this, people saying that. I heard names that was called out about this board, but I'm not going to mention that in terms of the name. But I just think that if you go about, which I think you're going about it in a way of trying to do the very best and try and give people the opportunity to participate in it, I just think that maybe you need to do a little bit more, because when you get that perception that, you're railroading it through, then you got the town meeting to deal with at that time. Now, the other thing I wanted to tell you was about this item here about the marijuana. The smell of marijuana is a big concern for citizens in this town. I've seen people at the meetings. They was at the select meeting the other night here, and I gave you a solution to the problem. And that was required. Maybe you have to amend the bylaw, but the requirement is that you need to put in a negative pressure system with carbon charcoal filters that will get rid of the smell of the marijuana. And I talked to the chair of the select board, and he said that he was going to get with maybe a couple of people from this board, from the public health board, and also from the select board, and he says, and George, you'll probably be included.
Mr. Sanders, I'm going to start, that's your 2 minutes, but I'm going to start, you weren't at the meeting last week or 2 weeks ago when we had it. That was all we talked about, was the smell. They're coming back with specialists. We're not even going to entertain anything with that property until they deal with the issue that's there right now. So we have been listening, and if you had watched us on TV 2 weeks ago, that's all we talked about.
I wasn't here.
Well, no, all right, well, that's what we talked about. So we are aware of that, so. But
Okay.
we are, and I thank you for your.
Well, that was Monday night that the chair told me what he was going to do.
Well, we're doing it. We have when are they scheduled to bring the consultant? Probably the 17th, whatever.
Thank you, Mr. Sanders. Can I say one comment, please?
Sure.
So I would like to ask for all of our residents who might be watching this, I appreciate what Mr. Sanders says. It's unfortunate that we are getting a bad reputation, and certainly work to improve that. Every other Saturday, I'm at the library in the morning. If you have any questions, come by and talk. You have my email address, you have my phone number, you have ways of contacting us if these meetings are not a good time for you to attend. If you have questions, I would much prefer, folks, that you reach out to us and not just put information out there on the internet or in Dunkin' Donuts or wherever else. Because if you're just talking with each other and you're not talking with us, then that's part of the problem and not part of the solution. Please be part of the solution. Come to this meeting next time on September 7th, September 14th. Other than Mr. Sanders here this evening, I don't think we have any other audience members participating here who are interested in the MBTA. For all the outrage that there is, where is everybody? Please,
Come to our meetings.
come to our meetings. Watch the meetings.
And if you can't, they're recorded, so you can go back and watch them.
That's right. So it's a two-way street.
Can I also add one thing too? I would also suggest that anybody who's out there listening, that you take a look at the Littleton Town website. Right on the front page, there is a link to the master plan. We have done a thorough analysis of where we are with the master plan in its implementation. And I think you will find that every single thing that comes before the board, all the big projects, 99.9% of them are in the master plan. And the master plan was approved by the residents of Littleton. So we're not just making this stuff up.
We also have a link that you can look at everything we're doing in advance. All the plans are all on there, especially with the new website. Everything is downloaded onto that.
And I would ask our board that maybe we consider having some additional forums or opportunities for folks to come and ask us questions once this is formally out.
Okay.
That might be appropriate for this, the MBTA thing.
Well, remember, with the MBTA, we had, 3 years ago, we had,
Yeah.
all of the public was invited to attend and give input, so,
And I hate to do this, Maren, because it's putting something on your plate, but this list, which is great, isn't going to mean anything unless we put numbers on any grants we have received in the past under any of these programs. It doesn't have to be exact, but I mean, under this program, did we get a $300,000 grant? Or, maybe over several years, or that, I had friends in my house last night from Concord who were that's all they talked about were the MBTA communities. And so
I'd also like to know how many grants we currently have out there waiting to hear back on this. I mean, is this something that the town administrator can help with?
Well, to me, the big difference with this list is that now it also includes land grants, which are for purchase of open space, and it includes MVP, all the sustainability grants, and those are heavily funded.
So maybe we
So we
just
don't
get,
even have the
to
opportunity
make it nice and
apply.
easy, why don't we just get a historical, how much money
Well,
we've gotten from
we-
the state in the past 4 or
Yeah,
5
had we a
years?
finance director, that would be a little easier.
So,
well.
Mr. Town Administrator, can you help us with this? Because people are they're gonna ask about this.
They're skeptical.
Yeah,
They're
they think
skeptical
we're
that,
just
like, what
making
if
this
we-
stuff up.
And as far as I understand it, there are only 2 communities who have rejected
Mm-hmm.
this whole process, Holden and some other.
They're being sued.
I think it's just.
Well,
I think it's
and
just
then
Holden
the,
now.
pardon?
I think it's just Holden now.
Oh, just Holden? And they've elicited a response from the attorney saying, we're not letting you go on this. This
Yeah.
is.
They're being
We're
sued.
litigating.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
so,
But by the time we get to town meeting, if we could have a rough idea how much money we're talking, how much we've gotten in the past 5 or 10 years, and what we're looking at over the future, just so that if the residents ask us, we'll have it. We
Because
need,
you know they're gonna ask,
of course.
and they should.
Okay. Can we try to get back on schedule? Okay,
Item 3.
so the Taylor Street is going to be continued till September 7th.
Yep, if you wouldn't mind voting on that.
site plan review for Shattuck Center.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Right, but if you wouldn't mind voting on the 2 continued public hearings. The 7 o'clock, you had 234 Taylor Street. They had requested a continuance to September 7th. I would recommend that one be at 7:15 PM.
Okay.
And similar for the 555 Newtown Road, the Skyview Lane. That public hearing was scheduled tonight for 7:15. I would recommend you continue that to Thursday, September 7th at 6:45 PM.
Okay.
So I move that we continue the 234 Taylor Street public hearing to September 7th at 7:15, and that we continue the 555 Newtown Road public hearing to September 7th at 6:45 PM.
Second?
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye. Right, thank you.
Okay. Anyone here for the 645 Shattuck Street? Oh, okay. Come on up. Site plan review.
Lauren. September 7th, I'm out of town. Can we Zoom?
I'll ask. Okay, what do we have? That one? It's up to you. Do you have it?
Well, we get that ready. Thank you very much for having me. My name is Brian Forrest. I'm with Vertex Companies. We're the town's project manager for the Senior Center project, 35 Shattuck. With me is Drayton Fair, principal of LLB Architects, and Eric Williamson. He is from CDW Consultants, the civil engineer. Thank you to Liz, the director of the Senior Center, who's also in attendance, as well as Bob Romilly from the PNBC, as well as Bartlett Harvey, who's also a representative of the PNBC as well. I'll kick it over to our design team to go over some of the site plan review that we have for you guys. And also thank you to Myron for helping facilitate this. So, thank you.
Good evening, and thank you for your time. My name is Drayton Fair. I'm principal with LLB Architects. And with us tonight is Eric Williamson from the CDW. We're very excited about this, about the project. We sent a lot of information previously to you. It's a little bit of a strange site, you may understand, in that the town has purchased 31 Shattuck Street, and it is going to be, it's in the process of being merged with the larger site of 51 of where we are now, 21 Russell Street. So on the application, I did put down that there are wetlands. There are 54 acres, but that applies to the entire site. The Shattuck Center, Senior Center itself is going to be built on the 31 Shattuck Street parcel, on a portion of it. After the project is going to be completed, my understanding is that the town is going to legally separate and create a saleable lot from the existing house at 31 Shattuck Street. So it's a little bit of a strange animal in that, again, it is part of the larger parcel, but we're only developing a small portion of 31 Shattuck Street. The building is going to be built right over here, right across from the library, on the site of the tennis courts. The approximate limit of work, we are just under 42,000 square feet. So our understanding is that we don't have to go for stormwater permit. We're adding about 19 parking spaces across from the library. The building, again, approximately 19 spaces across from the library. The drive down will be the same. The building will be 2 stories. Entered from the parking area across from the library into the first floor. There will be another story above this, much like the building we're in, actually. In terms of landscaping, trying to buffer the building and the site from the neighboring, from the existing house. There are optional plans and alternates for a bocce court off Shattuck Street. It is built into the hill a little bit, so there will be landscaping on either side of it. There's a service area off the parking area that will service the kitchen. If you have any questions, I'm certainly here. Eric is here to help me out with any site plan questions. As I said, we're kind of excited about this for the citizens of Littleton.
Do you have anyone at the board?
I just, the way the site plan is presented, it appears the bocce court is on the, you're presenting the, what do you refer to it, the lower level, the ground level?
Yes.
Okay, and then there's a second level that would access the bocce court? Or not?
Correct.
Okay.
The second level is approximately, there's a large multi-purpose room here.
Right.
Where they will use that for dining.
Okay. And I understand for this purpose that it's just a little confusing to see the court when I know the site and I know it's going to be elevated. That's fine. And I'm glad you talked about the existing house, because obviously your site work is going up to the house and it makes it easier for that to happen. So that's interesting. Other than that, how did you arrive at the parking count?
Well, the parking count was incorporated all of the parking that you see here on the site as well. I don't know if I think we tried to basically add as much as we felt was possible and appropriate.
Okay.
I don't know that.
I'm just wondering if there's any, it seems, I don't have any problems. I'm just curious what the methodology was. You basically looked at the most you could do on this particular parcel.
Right. The drive and the parking for the library is already there.
Yeah.
So it's
No, it makes
basically
sense.
mirroring the parking on the other side of that existing drive.
Those are my questions.
Okay. Barbara, do you have any questions? Lisa?
Not at this moment.
Anna?
So, is there a sheet for the second floor that you're referencing?
I didn't include the second floor in the materials that I submitted, but there certainly is, and I can certainly get that to you.
It just feels like there are various sheets that are missing, and so it caused me to question, what's even there. So I don't feel comfortable moving, advancing the ball on this until we get to see all of the plans. And I do recall, and maybe I think everyone was on the board except maybe Bartlett, when we had the review of the Reuben Hoare Library plans, those went through peer review. So I would expect that we would do the same with these too, and be able to get those results so that we can have them for the next time.
And just so that I understand, what type of peer review would you be looking for on this?
Whatever we did for the Reuben Hoare
I
Library.
don't believe we did a peer
We
review.
did.
Okay, I don't recall that at all.
We did.
Okay.
I have,
Oh, here's the second floor show.
I would certainly think we would. I mean, this
We
is a
did.
huge,
yeah.
So we have to tell the peer reviewer what it is that we're looking for on this.
Drainage.
So drainage?
That's it. What
Well,
else?
I would actually say, whatever we did for the Reuben Hoare Library, we should do for this. So if you could please look it up, I would appreciate that. And then that's what we should request as well. Because the town standards were set by the library. I mean, the library came in on time, on budget, and I think part of that had to do with the fact that we did a good job at, reviewing the plans with Green, and they were then able to follow through on them.
But the on time, on budget is referring to the whole project, which is not subject to a site plan review.
No, I get that part of it. All I'm saying is that that could be a contributing factor to being able to have gotten that project done that way.
Do you have any recollection, Bartlett? Or Mark is in the audience?
No, I wasn't
Okay.
involved at that early stage.
Okay.
I don't remember we came to the planning board several times, but.
I don't remember site plan review, but
Here it is.
okay.
Okay.
Well, I don't think, well, first of all, we have sewer now, so we don't need to deal with the sewer. All we're really looking at is drainage.
look at parking.
We looked at stormwater review, zoning bylaws, aquifer water resource district special permit, the plans, and, yeah. So there you go. Those are the things.
Possibly site lighting? What is the site lighting?
It'll be
You're proposing.
basically an extension of what is there now.
You can take a
We're
look at
using
these
the
if you'd
same-
like.
We reviewed the documents for the library, we're not planning on using different site lighting.
I kind of feel like, I'm kind of with Anna on this. I kind of feel like if this was a commercial building that somebody was coming, we would be asking a lot more questions. And just because this is a town building,
Well,
we seem to be kind of saying, okay, sure.
yeah, I think the confusion might come from the fact that this is a site plan review, not a
Special
plan
permit.
review. And however, I think everyone is interested in the second floor, what it might look like. From Shattuck Street, it's going to appear to be one story. From the library, it's 2 stories. When I've seen a rendering, it looks complementary to the library. There's no harm in putting that all together.
And lighting, parking,
Well, we have parking.
oh, yeah.
But the typical things that we look at site plan review are lighting and parking,
And drainage.
drainage, and, buffering,
we look at
landscape buffering to
landscaping.
neighbors.
That's
and-
not in the plans.
Yeah, I mean, what about landscaping? And have you
Well,
guys?
you have things indicated, but it
But
might be
have-
good to have a specific sheet, a landscape
And
sheet.
have you consulted with the various, committees that we have? I always forget all their names because they're always changing.
Well, there is a shade tree committee.
Yeah,
But usually there is a sheet, a landscape sheet that would identify planting and it is, and there's also planting along Shattuck Street, if any. So those are the kind of things that we go over in.
I would also like to know what's being done from a sustainability perspective, but I don't know if that really falls under our purview, but,
We have been certainly developing the documents since we submitted the materials for the site plan review. I have basically a set of construction documents on the screen. So I would love to go over everything with you if you'd like.
Sure.
Or we can submit whatever you would like for your review later. But
I think what you're hearing is that we'd like a submittal. You could certainly go over the items we've discussed on your set, but I don't think going over it on the screen is going to move you.
No, we need a set of plans.
sure.
Yep.
Okay.
So, board members, April 23rd, 2020 is the list that I have in front of me from the Green International peer review comments. Stormwater report was the first one, and so in this case, we don't need stormwater review because of the size of the property.
You don't need a separate stormwater special permit because of the amount of disturbance is under an acre.
Okay.
That's
That
the
doesn't mean
threshold
that
for-
wouldn't be included in a stormwater,
Exactly.
would be included in a
We
peer
can have
review.
Greens look at the drainage.
Okay. And then we did zoning bylaws, then we did the Aquifer and Water Resource District special permit, so that's something that wasn't included as part of this application package, was their application for.
Because they're not triggering any requirement for a special for our water resource district special permit.
Even though it's just across the way from the library portion?
Well, they're not adding more than the minimum amount of impervious surface,
Okay.
and so it doesn't trigger the requirement for a water resource district special permit.
Yeah, and then the plans, so those were the 4 things that they did last time for the other town building. Okay, thank you.
Okay, well, obviously, we're not ready to keep going. When can we put them on? Or when do you want to be on?
As soon as possible.
Next meeting is September 7th.
Okay, can you be ready have everything for September 7th? You should, right?
Yes.
Wouldn't it make more sense to have them go through peer review and then come back once we at least have the Greens comment?
So we'll shoot for the 7th and see if we can't get that
Okay.
ready for them. That's 3 weeks.
3 weeks. Okay. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you.
Mr. Monari, may I speak?
Sure.
Time for our interim town administrator. So just a question just to our team here. So how might this impact the schedule? We have a construction schedule and commitments that we're trying to keep up on, as well as inflation, construction inflation that we're trying to deal with as well. So, certainly respect the right of the planning board to ask more of the team in this instance. I'm just curious as to what the material impacts of this might be in terms of our schedule, our capacity to break ground per hour.
I don't think we're asking more. We are asking to be brought along in the way that we would deal with any other building in town.
Jeff, I was just asking them what the...
okay.
I wasn't asking...
But
I was just curious
the
what the
peer review might.
I'm thinking the peer review, yes.
Currently, right now, we're probably a couple months away from getting a guaranteed maximum price. So this, if we can get on the agenda for the 7th, I believe that we'll be able to incorporate any type of review or peer reviews into our site plan at that point, so.
Okay, great. If we have to add an extra meeting to keep it rolling, we can most definitely do that.
I agree.
Thinking about the issues that are addressed in a peer review, if there needs to be some design changes, can't recall a time when the board has required design changes to a building. It's more to the either landscaping or drainage.
Right.
Yeah, the
Based
things
on-
we've talked about, yeah.
Well, and since we haven't seen the second floor, I mean, we at least want to take a look at it.
Well, that's
Yeah.
that's kind of a moot point, because this has all gone through, the towns approved it and everything else like that. It had a second floor when town meeting approved the funds to do this and everything else. We're just taking a look at it. What do we?
Normally, I would say the second floor isn't relevant, except for the second floor in this building will engage in the grade at the Shattuck Street side. So we should understand it, I mean, it's not, I think it looks fine, but I mean, it's not unreasonable to, look at it.
Look, my only question is that we've already run this through and town meeting voted on it. This building was kind of built back then. It was all set to go.
Sure.
What are we gonna, the height's probably not gonna change.
No,
Maybe the
no.
interior, I'm saying is we might want to look at it only because,
Yeah, because we want to look at it.
okay, we
Right,
want to look
so,
at it.
so just to put it into perspective, when the library came to the planning board in 2020, there were about 51 comments that needed to be addressed by Green International. So, you know, there are things that are found and need to be amended, adhered to, whatever, by the work that needs to be done. So we just want to make sure that that's the same process we follow. And from a timing standpoint, town administrator, I totally understand, and we'll try to expedite this as much as possible.
If you want to work directly with Green back and forth before you even come back to us, we're okay with that too, so that once everybody comes back, they're all on the same page as well.
Yep.
That would make it easier. Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. We'll get you on for the 7th. Thank you. Where are we now? 7 o'clock? Yeah, we're close. No, Sanctuary, no, we're at 7:05. Request for hours for the marijuana facility on 257 Great Road, Community Care Collaborative.
The 537.
537, excuse me, I can't read.
Somebody here for that?
So we have a request, found out this afternoon that this meeting wasn't a good schedule for the property owner, or for Mr. Gianetta. We have a.
Thank you.
I don't know, Mark, if you wanted to start, or do you want me to start?
Do you want to discuss it, or do you want to have Mr. Gianetta here?
That's,
Yeah. I'd rather have him.
Yeah,
here.
let's just put it
Yeah.
aside until he can come.
okay. And then the timing question is whether or not, well, I guess if we can't talk about it, but the timing question is whether or not the board is comfortable doing this as a minor adjustment to the hours, or if would you believe it would require a public hearing notice and.
I don't think so. When we did it for, it's a marijuana facility. It's like a liquor store. They become that. When we did it for CVS, we did it as a site, when CVS asked for extended hours. The liquor stores, most of them, if they want extended hours, they just go to the selectmen and get it. So I think I personally think we should just handle it that way. They're asking for an extra hour, go from 9 to 10, correctly? Correct me if I'm wrong? Isn't
3
that what
nights a
he's
week.
asking? And it's in an industrial land. It's not
Does
like
the
this.
marijuana bylaw say anything about?
I'm
About
just
needing to
trying
come
to
back?
think about, there really aren't abutters
No, there's
that
no
might be
butters.
affected.
There's no butters, but if you want to have Mr. Gianetta here, I totally get that, but I think it's pretty minimal. I don't think we need to advertise it as a,
Yeah, happy to follow
Okay.
whatever direction the board cares.
great.
I agree, I think we have to look at the bylaw, too.
Okay, so 7:15 is
There's something
continued.
about times.
I'm going to try to get us on schedule or close, not even
I didn't
close.
have a chance to look.
12 Robinson Road?
Good evening, Mr. Chair. For the record, I'm Melissa Robbins from Fairland Robbins. Also with me tonight is Joe Cataldo, the developer, and Matt Waterman, the engineer from Land Tech. We gave Mr. Zegowitz the night off, as I think the board heard enough from him at the last meeting. Since the last meeting, we did receive written questions from Plnbrd member Anna Houston. Thank you for those, Anna. We did have the architect go through, and I think a lot of the questions regarding the waivers, we don't actually need waivers because a lot of the questions you had asked were in regard to the existing structure, which within the overlay itself, they allow for relief because we're keeping a historical structure and it's required by the RFP to keep it that way. So the relief that we're asking for is allowed by the overlay to the extent that the building already exists today.
Well, actually, not all the questions were.
Oh, no, just as to the architecture ones. I'm going to run through the rest of them.
Okay, great, thank you.
So
I want to go back to that, though, but you're saying that if that structure was built new, they would require waivers, but since it's.
No, we wouldn't, I don't
Okay.
even think the board could allow for waivers. We would have to meet your code-based zoning
Okay.
by
Okay.
making sure that the fenestration, the
Right, right, right.
direction, the
But be-
architecture.
Because it's existing and it's governed by, this other process
Right.
that Linda Stein assures me is, you're
Well,
gonna be like this.
Mr. Gage, your own process, even through your own code for the planning board, allows for relief for historical structures,
Sure.
because it's one of the intentions.
I guess
of
that's what I
this.
was trying to
Yes.
understand. This is the first thing we've done in the form, that will be
First residential.
accomplished.
Yeah.
So,
So, and we're excited to use it, and just to Linda, for Linda and the Historical Commission, we are really working through that process. I think I said at the last meeting, they hired a consultant, she's been excellent. We have an agreement with the commission, the restriction for the historic to the state is going forward, so everything there is moving
Okay,
swimmingly.
great.
I mean, we're really down to the nitty gritty. I said to Maren today that I think that we'll actually have that all out next week in pen to paper. So, really excited to get that tied up with the Historic Commission. That process has been going really well. I won't labor it, but I will say I had the joy of walking through that beautiful structure. And I really think it's a beautiful structure. It really needs a ton of work. I'm excited for the town of Littleton that the work will actually be done to keep the things that are historic and get rid of the things that are not historic, and is certainly a blight to the neighborhood to drive by on a daily basis, including my client.
so one other question, since I'm also on the CPC now, what process is that when you actually buy it from, what is that process gonna be?
It's actually just the town meeting vote actually gave the authority through the Board of Selectmen.
Okay.
So they hold all jurisdiction. We already signed a purchase and sales agreement with them.
I understand that, but when will that occur?
Oh, as soon,
Okay.
we have to get the historical restriction from the state in place, which I understand once we apply, that it's about a 90-day process, so we'll keep our fingers crossed that that's actually what it is. As soon as we have that restriction in place that we can put on record, then we can close.
Okay, great.
The town needs the security that we're going to do what we say we will do in perpetuity in place prior to us taking the property from the town.
Okay.
So I guess with that, Jeff, I have a question. So if this isn't the property of Mr. Cataldo yet, how can we proceed to do?
Well, we have 100% authority. Not only did we win the bid through the RFP process, and we came with very clear direction as to what our marching orders were. We have a person from the Board of Selectmen here, so they can also say that. But the purchase and sales agreement gave us full authority to come here today and to get all of our permits. It's actually what the town wants us to do, is get our permits, get the restriction done, buy the property, and get the work done. So we're actually doing exactly what the town has asked us to. We have full authority to do so. It's no different than if I was here for a general commercial property and had it under agreement. I don't own it yet, but I have the authorization of the property owner to do so. The only weird twist here is that the town happens to be the owner here, not a private property owner. So, no, full jurisdiction to proceed here. We're moving right along. It's actually taken quite a little bit of time to get to the planning board just because we've been working out the historic issues for so long. Not that it's anybody's fault, it's just devil's in the detail with these historic restrictions down to the window panes and the molding and the lighting and what stays and what goes, what door you use. So that took a lot of time to walk through.
Great, I appreciate all that time.
Yeah. And really, the Historic Commission and Linda have been great to deal with. Any other questions there? Okay. So just quickly back to your comments. So there were two global comments about special permits that may or may not be required. The stormwater permit will not be required here because we're not disturbing more than an acre, so that's why there's no special permit that's been requested there. And the other permit that you had requested, we look at was a shared driveway or a common driveway, but that's actually addressed in your code-based zoning, so you don't need a separate special permit for that. You can proceed with this type of access for residential uses in this in your code-based zoning. So those are not required.
Okay.
You had some great insight in your comments about the width of the parking and maybe making it easier to be more accessible in the rear if we adjust those spaces. And just for those two comments, I'm going to just turn over to Matt Waterman from Land Tech, and he will address your comments regarding the parking and the construction location.
Yep, and the plan, and sorry for getting it to you so late. For for the record, Matt Waterman with Lantec Consultants. We did put together a turning movement plan, which is up on the screen. The top two is the historic building 1 closest to Robinson Road, and then the bottom 2 is the duplex building in the back. In both, the left side is a vehicle entering, and the 4 or the 2 on the right hand side are vehicles exiting. What we were trying to do was best management practices with road widths. We were trying to narrow things up while keeping lanes as big as we felt comfortable with. When you put them to having a car that can come in and sweep without having to jockey once or twice. This exhibit shows the entrances both on the top for building 1 behind the historic building, just widening or opening up that entrance if we want to have that car come in there cleanly. And then same thing down below, we had an 18-foot travel aisle, and my recommendation for the board would just be to open that up, put an additional 4 feet of pavement to clean up those traffic aisles a little bit. I did the worst case scenarios for each case. There's on the upper right, it's a vehicle that is parked, it backs towards the garage, and then it turns and exits. So that was one of the, and it's the same thing for a vehicle on the far space. It's the same maneuver and it works. And then on the lower one, you can see where the vehicle comes in, pulls into a space, pulls into the garage. And then on the right-hand side, it's a vehicle exiting the garage and a vehicle exiting a parking space. The parking configuration stays the same. We're just opening things up a little bit. We had asked that the board approve it, and we could provide revised plans with those changes, which are shown in this exhibit and that we've already submitted to the board.
May I ask a very specific question? So, in this particular drawing, this is the original house,
Yep,
correct? And then that's the garage back there.
correct.
And so you got garage on the right, and how do you access the garage on the left?
It's the other side.
That's on the bottom
That's
of the picture.
this one?
Yeah, you look, put your finger down to the left-hand corner, lower left-hand corner.
Other side.
Yep,
This one?
either one, yeah.
Now
both
now
of them.
down, that's the garage.
Right there.
For the
Okay.
duplex in the
The
back.
doors are in the other side of the building.
Okay, so that
duplex.
that was one of my questions, was so the garage door for the right side is on here.
Yep.
The garage door for this, number 2, is on
No,
that.
no, 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 no.
For a number of
There's
reasons.
2 garages for 1 and 2 on the, okay. I don't know which is 1 or 2, but 1 or 2 are here. It's a two double
Yeah.
Face of the
garage.
historic house.
And then the 2 units back here have 2 garages. So each unit has 1 garage, but there's, 4 garages total. So from the front units go in here, the back units go in there.
So she was right. There's 2 in the front,
Yeah, I
2
think
in
she
the back.
did say it
She
right,
was correct.
exactly.
Okay,
The way she puts, yeah.
okay.
Okay.
It is a little confusing, it's not conventional.
I think it's really clever.
Well,
Thank
it is, but I just didn't understand it
Take
based
credit
off
for
the
that.
drawings, so.
Well, that's why you have to listen in the meetings, because that's what he said at the meetings. See, I listen.
But your questions did get us to look at it a little more closely and put the auto turn on
I'm
it.
sure I listened. I
And
knew
it did
that.
warrant opening things up a little bit, so it was, the questions,
He had the garage with 2 ways in and out. That more,
What
don't
size-
you remember,
what
we all
size
said
car
that's
is
pretty
that?
clever back then.
It's
we
just
did
a
it.
passenger.
Yeah, but I couldn't visualize
Oh, all
it.
right, well,
Yeah.
I see
You're
things.
auditory.
Bill,
So-
you know. Anyway, anything else?
So a smaller car with a tighter turning radius could
yeah, and
navigate
that's
better?
not cranking the wheel, you can force it,
Oh,
or
okay.
someone, you can
All right.
stop and really crank your wheel. That's like trying to do it in a smooth motion. So it's a little conservative, I think you can make those turns a lot tighter, but
Okay.
especially if you're going 5, 10 miles an hour, which you typically are in your driveway, you can usually make much sharper turns. But, so I think there are a couple things, ways to open up the travel aisles to clean up and make those parking a little more smooth.
Can I just interject quickly, just to Ms. Houston's other point? We did get this exhibit plan over to the fire chief, and he did review it, and he had no issues or concerns with the configuration for the access. And I'll let, sorry, back.
Yeah, no, it is only, as that we would add a hydrant in the back.
Yes, which we would agree to do.
So we will be doing that, would incorporate a hydrant. I did submit a second exhibit. It's less glamorous than this one. It just showed some potential parking areas during construction. And I think, and Cataldo's does a really good job of managing their sites. I've been to one of their sites in Westford that's currently under control. All of their employees are given specific, they sign it, typically that's not an issue with these sites. But there are opportunities to park in several locations during construction while staying off of Robinson Road.
Anything else?
The only other thing was the fence on the right-hand side. We were going through the bylaw and felt like that was something that the board preferred. If that's something that is up for discussion, we'd be willing to work with the neighbors and address how they want it screened, and I don't know if Joe's done that.
We actually have spoke to the neighbors and they do want the fence, so that
Okay,
secondary
sorry.
reason we put it in there was just discussions with the neighbors. And that will shield them from the access now to coming to the rear of the property to access the garage in the back, so it's a perfect solution back there to use fencing. And it's required for shared parking anyway.
So from the standpoint of what the fencing will look like, I mean, is it possible toward the front to make it seem more than just a slatted 6-foot-tall fence? I mean,
You had a
could it be-
transition.
Yeah, do you have that photo? We don't have that photo.
We don't have the photo, but in the architectural drawings that were submitted for the last meeting, it does start off shorter in the front and then gets higher in the rear.
But again, is it just the plain,
It's a plain white vinyl fence, but
Privacy fence, yeah.
the fence.
I think that's what the neighbors want.
Yeah. We had it, and I actually honestly fell in love with the fence, and I don't like fences. But I hope we can find it.
What do you want, the green monster?
No, I was
Just
wondering
something
if...
ornamental, more ornamental
Yes,
towards the front where we
exactly.
don't need the
I
screening.
mean, if you
then-
think about it, it's a historical house, right? And
Right.
so, in Littleton, typically speaking, there weren't a lot of fencing, and so, I don't know, I was thinking about, I think like the Tuttle House, doesn't it have what is that, a
A
rail?
split rail?
Yeah,
So,
a split rail
This
type.
is what we had concepted. It's like a white picket fence, 4 foot.
Yeah, it doesn't look historical, but
Yeah, I don't know.
I'd like to
think
hear
that's-
what the others think.
It's fine. We don't know. We don't know.
Who doesn't like a white picket fence?
Yeah.
But we were sensitive to that issue. We wanted to make sure that we didn't want to start a 4-foot fence running up to the front of the property line.
And
to
then
your
it
very
transitions
point.
up, and I thought it was genius.
And yes, it's very limited landscaping and the very limited fencing and historical structures generally, but we're trying to be
Yeah.
respectful of the neighbors and your own code-based zoning.
So, some of the questions that I had page 18, what is the proposed facade? So that had to do with the back building. And so,
Yep, and I do have responses to that from Jim, and I know he kind of highlighted the materials for the back building. And Joe will know more about this than I do, but to answer that question, the back building includes, give me 1 second, garage and duplex constructed type 5B wood frame construction on concrete foundation with full basements, exterior finishes similar to that of the existing house and barn building. It will consist of wood composite siding and trim detail, insulated fiberglass exterior doors, vinyl or composite windows with insulating thermal pane glazing, and fiberglass/asphalt roof shingles.
okay, but Mara, correct me if I'm wrong, maybe I'm thinking about the fenestration instead of the facade percentage. Anyway, let's table that one for now. So my other question was, on page 23 of your application, you said the height of the duplex building is to be a half-story, and I didn't know if that meant a second story is a half-story.
It's a full story and a half. So it's an additional half story, so it's a story and a half.
So the building, the duplex itself is 1.5 stories?
Right, correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it's because it has the roof on the top to minimize the scaling of that roof, so it's not a full 2-story and then a roof. It's
Okay.
that roof line starts at the top of the first story and then goes up to the peak.
Okay.
So it's like a cape, so it has the peel, it cuts
Yep.
down on the massing,
Okay.
and so I
Yep.
think that's when they call it a half story, is when you have that.
That's what
And
I
don't know
thought,
the
I just
architectural
wanted to
term for it, I
confirm.
apologize.
And Ms. Houston, just so you know, I know that we were late to the party today getting these written responses in, but you do have written responses in the file, and Jim Zegowitz did respond, saying that page 24 shows 1.5 stories with ground story height 10 feet, 1 1/8, half story is indicated 10 feet as required.
Well, that's great that they're in the file, but I did not receive a copy.
No, that's okay.
And then, so humor me, please, because this is just because I want to know. If you bring up your plans, do you have the ability to bring up the plans?
Which sheet?
Yeah, the sheet.
Which sheet?
HB 1-5.
So I think that's one of the architectural plans showing the floor plan for the existing house.
Yes.
Yeah, and I'll tell you that Jim tried to show what's existing and what's proposed. So those plans get a little confusing. I agree with you, just trying to figure it out, but I
Well,
think,
I was trying to figure out, is there a third bathroom upstairs?
I thought your question was bedroom. Was it
Well,
bedroom?
the first
No,
was the
it's
kitchen.
bathroom.
stove.
So on the
Well,
second
actually,
floor.
stop right here. So see this little item here?
That's the existing kitchen as it
Kitchen,
is today.
That's the existing kitchen, okay.
So that gets demolished. So he tried to show like the before and after
Okay,
type.
but that's not the historical fireplace.
Oh, no, that's the
No, no.
existing stove.
Okay.
So when you
So-
come into the kitchen to the right-hand
Yeah.
side, there's
Yeah.
a very old
This
stove.
entire thing is the historical fireplace.
Yeah.
The chimneys.
Okay.
And you can see how much room it takes.
It's
It's
gigantic.
the size of a room.
It's the biggest fireplace I've ever seen.
It's
in a house
beautiful.
this size. Yeah, it's
It
huge.
is.
And the
mantle
stove
in the
that,
kitchen especially.
Yeah.
the
Okay.
stove that needs to go, that the gas is already turned off, sits directly across from that. So that's what you're looking at on the plan. That's to be
Okay, and then
removed.
go to the next one, which I think is the upstairs.
Yeah.
And this is what I was confused about, because it says master bath, and then there's another bathtub. And then,
I think this was the existing.
That's correct.
Yeah, if it's
So,
dashed
and your
line.
intention is to take
Yeah.
out, to have that a two-story or a.
so it's
open
just
space.
confusing.
Yeah, the plan, it's hard to see here, but what he tried to do was use a dashed line so you could see what's existing today. And then you could see with the other overlay, which it is really hard to see, especially up on the screen here, what's proposed. But there will be, on the second floor of both of the units, there will be a full bath. And that bath that's existing today is take out.
And he did submit updated plans that took off the
The
shape.
cross hatching, because I thought it was
First
confusing as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Mine
those
aren't
were
those
provided.
uploaded yet.
Okay, humor me, so
The
you did take out the front stair?
updated plans that she's
or-
talking about.
The front stairs into the structure will remain, but when you go into the structure to that, what is the front
Right,
door?
it's not
There
really-
is a funky set of stairs
Yeah.
that kind of loops
Well,
up.
it's a tiny little.
Yeah, they will never function for any purpose, but we're
Right.
trying to see if we can retain them as some sort of architectural feature,
Yeah.
bookshelf or,
Knickknacks,
yeah, some
Shelf,
knickknacks or
okay.
shelving, but
They
no,
won't be
I mean,
accessible.
they won't let
It'll
them.
be
You're
floored
going to
off.
floor,
Yeah.
the second floor will go across the
But the
stairwell.
goal is to try
Yes.
and preserve the stairs in some form. or
There'd be
another.
stairs to nowhere, just as
Yeah.
an architectural feature.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're about this wide,
They're
and
about- yes.
about that steep.
Your town council, who's slightly taller than me, had to duck through like basically every stairwell going up to the second floor. So yes, they will be removed.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's unfortunate, but.
But may stay as an architectural feature, but they will not be able to be used
Right,
functionally.
they're not
Yeah.
functional, yes.
No way.
So my final question, and maybe having a slide of the entire site would be helpful. So the septic piece of it, I know that you had all of your engineering information in there, but in terms of where the actual leaching area is going to be, because currently, this property isn't part of the sewer plan, so.
Correct.
So how do you plan, I mean, I just would like to see.
Yep.
Oh, yeah, Matt can speak to that. We've actually done the testing out there, so Matt can
Yep,
speak to
with-
that quickly.
The Board of Health agent, and if you look on the screen, it's in between the garage building and the duplex, underneath the parking area. So it's enough to support 8 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms per unit, 4 units.
I didn't know you could put it under concrete, though.
Yep.
Yeah, you're
The only
allowed.
time they ask that you try and, they discourage it, but it's not illegal or not allowed. So anytime they do, the only thing they get concerned with is if getting oxygen to the lines. So if your septic system is below pavement, you have to put a vent. And then that's just to allow oxygen so that the leach field does what it does, it needs oxygen, so. That's the only, like I said, and then if you pump the system, and I think the front building may end up being pumped, so it's gonna need a vent anyway, so. And the combination of having the pump and the vent, that'll get enough oxygen just with the airflow.
So when you
of the
say pump, you mean to pump to get to the.
Yeah, it'll be gravity once it hits the leach field, but it'll be a pump system to get up there, just for that existing front building. The back building is gonna be gravity fed.
We're pretty comfortable with the design and the layout, and we've done soil testing out there now, so we're pretty comfortable with the leaching, so.
Yeah, I saw all those
Yeah.
tests. Okay, thank you for showing me that, because I couldn't picture it and didn't have access to those. So, I don't recall if anybody brought this up the last time, but what about electric vehicle hookups in the garages?
Well, we wouldn't put them in the garages, directly in the garages, just for fire-related issues. But if we will have connections available, so if people have electric vehicles, they would be able to be installed. But not directly in the garages, just because of fire code issues.
I thought we left it, to be perfectly honest, that you would have the power out there.
That's correct, so we'll have the connections, it's like, it's capable. So if people do have electric vehicles, that it can be
1 or 2 stations.
done, but they would not be indoors. Yeah.
Yeah, so you'll have enough power out there if somebody wants to
Absolutely.
upgrade to it.
Yeah, it's necessary in this market anyway. I mean, most likely you're gonna have a purchaser out here that has an electric vehicle that's going to need a charging station. So from a marketing standpoint anyway, you're going to need the capability.
The capability.
Yeah, there's not a lot of places in the area of Littleton right now, especially in this area, to go plug in a vehicle unless you're gonna go to one of the car dealerships to sit there, yeah.
So my final question, and if I can get Mr. Yates' attention, so from a sidewalk perspective, you all are going to be putting a new sidewalk here, right?
Correct.
Okay.
And then we have a little pocket park.
And a crosswalk.
Yeah.
And the crosswalk, right? So from the standpoint of the neighborhood, I know that we've asked other applicants over time to be able to, expand out the sidewalk. I mean.
So there's an existing sidewalk on each side of this.
Correct.
Which is a certain width. And I assume that's the width that you're gonna provide.
Yeah, we're gonna be approving that.
Yeah, and so it has to match up with what's on either side.
Okay, so rather than building a more conventional one, it's going to be a.
No, we're proposing a 5-foot walk along our frontage.
Oh, okay.
But then it
Yeah.
will transition to the existing.
Transition to the existing, okay.
Right, and so that's what I thought, and so then my question is, would it be possible to transition that to the abutters as well?
What do you mean?
In
I would
other
defer
words,
to Joe on
it's
that
a
one.
short amount of sidewalk, and you've got this beautiful, brand-new development there, and then the sidewalks on either side are going to be rickety and broken and whatnot, so I was just wondering whether or not.
Well, I think
that
the
was
transition,
asked.
we'll make sure the transitions to the existing sidewalks are as natural as possible, but what we actually thought the better focus was for pedestrian safety and accessibility is to provide the pedestrian crosswalk there that could actually guide people into that new sidewalk area and then towards the amenities where the other sidewalks are located. That was the reasoning behind doing the crosswalk to
In
the sidewalk.
fairness, no one uses that sidewalk.
Except for you.
Sometimes, walking back and forth. But it is, as
So
it
what
goes
about all
down the
the-
street, it gets really bad, you know.
Well, there is no sidewalk beyond
There's no sidewalk in
your
front of
house.
mine, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, well, I was just curious simply because of the stories I've heard over the last couple of years about the children walking to the school bus, and I thought, well, if there's going to be
Well,
a sidewalk
the
area.
school bus
then-
is here,
Yeah.
so you would walk here.
Cross.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think the extension that goes towards the common is also, it's neat, where it's a sidewalk that's pulled way off of Littleton Road and extends across and then meets
Well,
up with
it's,
Littleton Road.
I mean, let's just talk about it, because the sidewalk does not continue past here.
Right.
And this is a parking lot. So, I mean, it is suggestive of a use to, do that, what you did, so, anyway.
Okay.
Any other questions? Anybody else? You done with this? Yeah?
I think it's great.
Do you want to entertain, vote to close the meeting and then vote on
Any
it?
public comment?
There's nobody here.
George and Mark are here.
I don't see George raising his hand.
You can't see.
I can, well, Joe's head's in the way.
He can only hear.
We're sort of the glare.
Yes.
Wow.
I don't hear anybody, so let's move on. We're running very late. It's past my bedtime, so.
So there is a draft site plan decision posted online. The one condition I would recommend, based on the comment from the fire department, is just that the fire department, wait a minute, what was the other side?
They added the hydrant.
They added a hydrant.
Yeah,
I had
okay.
suggested the fire department comment actually in my email to you, but then subsequent to that, we actually
You had the-
received the fire department, the comments saying that they were satisfied with the access and they'd like a hydrant, so.
Right.
As long as their comments are part of record, we've agreed to all comments of record.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, and I will add the two exhibit plans to the reference plans, and then that way you'll have a complete record of.
Yeah, and that exhibit plan shows expanding, and it has dimensions, and it says, and it has specific radiuses, it has all the
So we want to
information.
close the public hearing and vote on
It's
it?
not a hearing,
I mean, yeah,
so you can just move to a vote.
okay. Someone want to make a motion to approve the,
I'll make a motion to approve the site plan
As-
for 12 Robinson
I'll second it.
as presented.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Okay.
Well, so I have a question. Hold on. So we did the site plan review, but then we still have the decision. We did not vote the decision just now. What we did was, Byron said we didn't have a hearing because this isn't a public hearing. But we closed the discussion, so I'm unclear about what we
What's
just
going
did.
on?
Yes.
Okay, so with the site plan review, the decision, I would take that as this only requires one vote. Certainly happy for the discussion. So site plan review, it just describes what the application was, the owner had the meeting, listed the reference plan. I will add the two exhibit plans. The determinations are as laid out in the zoning bylaw, conformance with the master plan, and then the vote.
What else do we need?
Well, I think Anna's referring to that normally we would vote on the decision.
Correct.
For special permits, yes.
Okay.
But this isn't a special permit.
Well, but however you guys choose to do it.
We're not issuing a special permit.
I don't care. I'm just saying, if Anna
Right,
feels like it's
right.
necessary, then.
So from that standpoint, I mean, I don't know about you all, but we just got this, yesterday, so
Oh, I don't want to hold this up.
No.
No.
I think we're done with
Okay,
this.
well then you all will have to vote without my vote then.
You just voted it. We're only doing one vote.
Well, that's why
Site plan requires three, so.
Well, I know, we already, so if you want to say that you accused 4 of the 5 votes were for the site plan. Okay,
Yep, I will abstain.
okay,
Thanks.
we're good. You can go
Thank you
now.
very
Thank you very much, I
Thank you.
appreciate it.
So we have a 7:30 informal discussion. I don't see the applicant here, but
Then we shouldn't discuss it. Yeah, I think that should actually be like a planning board policy. If
I
the
agree.
applicant doesn't even show up for their own,
Yeah.
well, I think we should send direction. I think we should discuss some things ourselves and send direction to him whether we want the open space or the conventional. If he doesn't want to present to it, I think we can still make a decision which way we want to go with it. It's a pretty basic kind of thing. I think we,
I thought the discussion last time was that most people here thought that the conventional plan was not as good as the other plan.
well, no, I don't think that. I think the conventional plan is the way we should go because we're not getting any. First of all, we have to give them a waiver to go over under the 10 acres, which once we start doing that, we have to give it to everybody. The reason we did the open space was to get something usable out of it for open space. We're not getting nothing out of this.
I don't think the cluster plan works because as Bartlett said, we have to provide the waiver for that, and I just don't think it
I
works.
think we should just tell them that he needs to do with the conventional plan.
Right.
The 5 lots on 1 acre parcels. The benefit to the back is all gonna be left to us anyway. It's all gonna be, it's all wet, so we're not getting any walkable land. And we're also, nobody can go back there because the wells are back there, so it's not really open to the public as it is now. So we're not gaining anything.
Okay.
So that's why I'm saying we should
All right.
decide amongst ourselves, and whether he's here or not, say, we want a conventional subdivision, the open space.
Because
offers no
I was with Bartlett, I thought that we were sort of going toward the
I
open.
think we were until I took a better look at it, and and then I wanted to talk about, when we did the open space bylaw 30 years ago, or 20-something years ago, the reason we started at 10, because you're gonna get a bigger piece. At 8.5.
Of open space.
Of open space. At 8.5 of wetlands and everything else, we're getting nothing. So what's the benefit to us to do the open space? We don't gain anything from it, he just gains a
Okay.
shorter road and less subdivision standards, and once we start doing that, everyone's gonna come in with these.
Well, I certainly agree with you that whatever open space we get is of no
Marginal.
use to anyone.
Okay.
Yeah.
So why don't we,
Okay, I don't remember, on the conventional one, was there a separate lot for the wetlands and back, or was that
no,
part of
those are all
it?
part of the,
It's all part of
Yeah,
it?
this is the conventional.
so they're all part of those lots,
All right, it's all part, okay. so
Some
it's
of
all-
which is water.
wet,
Yeah,
so.
I mean, because,
And the other thing is, each one has its own septic system. If we did the open space plan, he's gonna put in a single system
Single
for
one.
everybody else, which I think
and that gets to be problematic with,
yes. So I think we should,
okay?
even though he didn't come, we should
All right.
tell him that we decided, that a conventional plan is acceptable, is the way we wanna go.
Yeah, based on the layouts presented, that you would prefer the conventional subdivision. Doesn't require waiver of the
Acreage,
acreage, and neither plan provides clear open space.
correct. We feel the open space is marginal at best and not beneficial to the town. How's that? Good, so we got rid of it?
Yep.
Even
Okay.
though he wasn't here. Perfect.
I'll agree to that.
I'll entertain a motion to dissolve this meeting and let us all go home.
I'll second that.
Anybody else? All those in favor? You didn't say anything tonight, wait a minute. You said enough, you just wanted to watch? Thank you, George.